Hi everyone, E3 Scott here. Just wanted to welcome you to my first step-by-step RC Foamy park jet build video. In this build video we're going to be building the FRC Foamies Su35 Mark II. Very similar to this one, although it's going to have a much nicer paint job by the time it's done. But I'd originally built this as a test bed to try out several different things, which I'll also be trying out on my plane I'll be building in the video, and some other modifications which we'll talk about briefly throughout the video. The good news is this plane has got 239 flights on it. It's flown, it flies absolutely awesome. I just love flying it. It's just a great plane. And anyway, this is the one we're going to build as we go through the video. So as I said, it is my first step-by-step build video, so I'll apologize up front. It's going to be lengthy. There's going to be some pregnant pauses, lots of ums and ahs, times when my brain can't keep up with my mouth, or vice versa. But hopefully, as I'm going to explain here briefly, you might understand why it's so long. But as a result, where I lack in quality, hopefully I make up for in quantity. I'll let you be the judge of that. Three main reasons why I wanted to do this video. First off, I don't know that there's one available on the internet right now that goes step by step on how to build this plane. I have done walk-around videos in the past on the Su35 Mark I and the F15 Mark II from FRC Foamies, but those show planes that are already completed. So they don't show you know, tab A going into slot B, or you know, thoughts going from the plans right through to the finished plane. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to do that. And I've been wanting to do a build video on a plane, so I thought, why not kill as many birds with one stone as we can. Second reason I wanted to do one, I don't participate in the RC Powers forum any longer, but I still have people that follow me through YouTube and other media. So I still get questions, or I've had people ask me, oh, you know, I'd like to see you do a video on different tech build techniques that you use. So some of the stuff I'm going to be showing is, you know, how I hinge my control surfaces, push rods that I use, things like that, that I make myself, I should say. These are not my, these are techniques that I've seen other people use, or I've adopted from what I've seen other people use. So if you're an intermediate to advanced type person, that may not be for you, but if you're just getting into the hobby, then hopefully you know, some of that stuff will be helpful, or at the end of the day it's just a different way maybe of doing something from how you do it. And I think more ways to do the same thing gives you more flexibility when you build. So, and the third one, just briefly, I will be talking at different stages about the modifications. On this plane, for example, I experimented with smaller ailerons, smaller elevons, and I also played around with the angle of the vertical stabilizers, and I also extended the KF airfoil forward along the leading edge extension. I'm going to be doing much of the same on the one that you're going to see in the video, as well as a couple of other things. These modifications are not my ideas. I know other people have tried them on this plane and others, and some of the stuff that I'm using is borrowed from other planes. What I will say is I strongly encourage you, if you've never built this plane before, is build it stock. And what I mean by that is cut the parts out the way they are on the plan, build it that way, try it out, and then you know, if you want to play around with something later, you have an idea in your head for something that you want to try, please go ahead. My great friend Stefan Moran from the great state of Alabama and I have a blog together called migzerus.blogspot.com, and we both you know, like to play around, tinker around with planes, you know, just in pursuit of that sort of perfect park jet, if you want, for how it suits our flying styles. So what I will say, I'm a big believer in, you know, what you see me do in this video and what you hear from my opinions, my philosophies, what you've seen other people do on YouTube and on the internet. Here's something that I've learned as I've gone along in my 2 years building foamy park jets. quite honestly, I don't think the most important thing is when you're standing there at the field with your radio in your hand, your plane flying around, it should be about you having as much fun as you possibly can with the plane that you've built to suit the way that you like to fly. Okay, so build your plane, you know, as you progress along in your park jet career. Build your plane kind of the way you want, with the power setup and every control surface setup, everything the way that you want. Don't worry about what I do, what people on YouTube do, what people on the forums do. You know, just follow your dreams. I know that sounds a bit corny, but that's what really matters, because when you're standing there at the field having fun with your plane, you know, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just worry about having your fun. Quite honestly, that's the way I look at it. Building these scratch-built planes is a real way to learn, you know, by testing and trying different things out, and it's, you know, it's a real avenue for freedom of expression. So there's my unpaid political service announcement, and I'll get off my soapbox. This will be my fifth Su Mark II build that I'm going to show you in the video, and I've also built the F-15 Mark II and Su-37 Mark I and the F-15 Mark I, all of which are very much the same. So if you want to build any of those planes other than this one, the techniques that I'm going to show you hopefully should spill over into those. And I don't throw all those numbers of how many planes I've built out there to impress you, but hopefully will give some credibility that the tips and techniques that I'm going to show you are coming from a standpoint of the fact that I have some experience in building these particular planes. There are some build pictures on the FRC Foamies website, so if you need to supplement what I'm going to talk about in this video with those pictures, I would encourage you to go to their website. I'm going to have links both on the YouTube channel, and I'll have even more links when I post this video on the blog, with, you know, tons of other information from people who have written great articles and threads that are much smarter than me, that will help you with hopefully other questions that I don't answer in this video. When you get the plans from FRC Foamies, you have the option of building two planes. You can build the Su-37, which is essentially this plane but has canards out here in the front, slightly different tails and different intakes. If you build the plane, if you cut out what's on the plans, you're going to get an Su-37. When you download the plans, you also get templates that allow you to build this plane without the canards and different tails. In the next part of the video, I'm going to talk in detail about the plan, so you'll see more on that. What you also get templates for the KF top and bottom, if you want to play around with KFs, you know, KF2, KF4, whatever combination you want, again, to make your plane fly the way you want it to fly. So FRC Foamies provides you with some really good stuff in their plans to have the option to build one or two or both of these planes, the 37 or the 35. I have done a video where I did a fly-off video comparing the Su-35 and the Su-37. Both planes essentially were built stock, identical weights pretty much. I took them to the field. I had the expos, the throws, everything all the same, so that I could evaluate their differences in how they handle. So you can watch that video, listen to my opinions if you're trying to figure out whether you want the Su-35 or the Su-37. One word to describe each, basically, in my opinion, at the same weight. The Su-37 having the canard out front here, you get a little bit more wing area, so lower wing loading for the same weight. The plane tended to handle a bit smoother. Because of the less wing area, higher wing loading at the same weight on the Su-35, it handled the same maneuvers a bit more aggressively. So those would be, if I had to compare, you know, in the bullet question round, that would be it. Smooth for the Su-37, aggressive for the Su-35. Okay, just quickly about the modifications. As I've mentioned, some of these modifications I've borrowed from other planes. Other people have tried them on this plane and have tried them on other planes. You don't necessarily have to try them on this plane. Anyway, I don't claim ownership to any of those modifications. I know other people have tried them. in the past. I just have adapted them and modified them to how I like my plane to fly, or even just to test different things. So again, build stock first if you never built it before, and the modifications are just there, you know, for information or something maybe for you to think about on this plane or another plane. This plane can be built very simply and flies just great no matter which way you set it up. You can fly it, you know, just build it as per the plans. Don't worry about KFs. Don't worry about all the fancy finishing and sanding and all that sort of stuff I'm going to do. Put a couple servos on it, elevons only, stick a motor, receiver, speed controller, and a battery in it, go to the field, have a great time. Okay, so you can get flying really quickly and it'll fly just great, elevons only. I will be, in the video, I will be building with 6 servos similar to this one, so I'll have full control surfaces, ailerons, elevons, rudders, full KFs with the modified KF, so I'll have full KF4 airfoils. I'll be doing you know, a very thorough sanding job and all that sort of stuff. So more of an intermediate, perhaps advanced type build if you want. So again, maybe one of the reasons why this video is as long as it is I'm trying to make sure that if you are fairly new to the hobby and don't have a lot of experience scratch building, that you'll be able to put the plane together and then configure it to suit your flying skills. And if you're intermediate to advanced and you want to build something at the higher end with you know, more control, more performance, hopefully I'll show you some tips and techniques for that as well. If you really want to get a little bit more complex and you want to build the Su35 with canards, you can build that with the moving canards. I provide a link. There's a very extensive link on the RC Powers forum on the FRC Foamies Su35 Mark II, and lots of great folks that are a lot smarter than me that can give you great advice on how to set up the canards on the Su35 if you want to set that up a bit more complex. Okay, so the video is going to be set up in hopefully a building block step by step. So like I said, the next part I'm just going to talk about just the plans, and then you know, we'll cut out the parts, talk some more about that, and it'll progress hopefully in a building block approach, each module or each part of it updating on the last part of it, right through till the jet is finished and ready basically to take to the field. This is kind of the only part of the video where I'm actually using a script. The rest of it I'm going to be doing a lot of off the cuff and ad-libbing. Again, a reason why it may be so long, but please bear with me. Hopefully there'll be lots of good gouge in there. And if you are a beginner, you know, when I start to talk about stuff that's you know, more advanced type building, go ahead, fast forward through that. I'm not going to know you are, so it's not going to hurt my feelings. And if you're an advanced, intermediate to advanced guy, and I'm talking about stuff that's obviously too simple for you, or you know, is simpler than what you need to know, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence. So again, please fast forward through that. I will be also putting a great link. There's an awesome link called thread called Resources on the RC Powers website. Although I will be doing step by step to put the plane together, there are certain things I'm not going to be showing you how to do. Some of the simpler things, if you still need help with those, on that resources thread, there's a series of videos that RC Powers did quite a while ago. You know, things like how to bevel your hinges, how to put them together, how to put carbon fiber in a wing, that sort of stuff. They're a lot smarter than me at showing that, so I will just put a link there, and you can go and get great information off of that thread. It's an excellent thread. I still use it all the time myself, you know, when I need to refresh my memory or learn something new about building my planes. If you have any questions, and I strongly encourage you to ask as many questions as you feel you need to help you get this plane put together, or just questions on you know, my thoughts on different motors, build techniques, whatever, please post them below on the YouTube channel or on the blog, migsurus.blogspot.com, and I will do everything I possibly can to help you out. I'm doing this video on my own time, purely out of pleasure, in a way to help give back to the hobby. A lot of people helped me out when I first got going in the hobby a couple of years ago, so you know, it's one of those ways to give back. I'm not affiliated with FRC Foamies in any way, so if you have technical issues with downloading the plans, or you know, anything that's more technically specific to FRC Foamies and their website or their thread on the RC Powers group, please get in touch with them to sort that stuff out. I'm mostly just going to be talking about the build and certain things that I like to do. All right, I think that's it for the intro. I want to thank you for watching this video. I thank you and in advance for your patience as you wade through all of this stuff that's going to be upcoming. Again, I hope it's useful to you, you know, in any way. If one person finds this video helpful in building this plane or any other plane, then my job has been complete and I'm satisfied. So thanks very much again, and enjoy the video. Hi everyone. I just realized as I was getting ready to get this video prepared and edited that I committed an act of heinous buffoonery, and I ended up saving the wrong portion of this video that I initially wanted to use, and deleted the correct one. So anyway, luckily I had another sheet of plans for this plane, so I'm just going to go over primarily what I want to do in this phase is just talk to you about the plans before I cut the pieces of foam out, and just some things that I like to do to prepare the plans based on my experiences of building this plane several times, and for some of the parts that may not, you know, if the first time you've seen these plans, I've also labeled them just to help out. So if you cut out the plans just the way they're sitting here right now, it's going to build you an Su35 Mark II. The nice thing about the plans, you just print this off on your computer, and these are templates that you're going to lay down over top of these plans if you want to build the Su35 variant. Obviously this goes up here on the leading edge extension. You just match that on there, and then when you cut it, it doesn't, you won't end up with the canard. You'll have without the canard. This part goes over the front of your engine nacelle, which I'll pull down here. So this is your nacelle intake, and this of course goes back along towards the back of the plane. I will, as you'll see later in the video, it still will need to be trimmed down somewhat, but anyway, just follow this template for now if you want to build an Su35, and then I'll show you later on in the video. You'll see how it needs to be trimmed down a bit more. It's obviously a bit different than the Su37 because the leading edge extension, and then as it blends into the wing, is a little bit different. And then this is for your horizontal stabilizer rudder. You don't really actually need to lay this over top. You can just measure this. This is, let me see, this is about 6.5 inches. So then you can just lay your ruler down, you know, 6.5 inches. And then, you know, just put a little tick here and then draw your line straight across, because the rest of it's exactly the same. So these are what you need to print off if you want to build the Su35 variant, which is what I'm going to be building. Included also in the plans are the templates for the KF airfoils. Top KF if you want to use KF2, and bottom KF if you're going to combine the two of them and use KF4 style airfoils. I'm also going to show you, because I'm going to be extending the KF forward along the leading edge extension. I'm going to show you, you'll see later on in the video, you'll see how I do that using this template. So if you use this template, you're going to build the Su35, and you want to put your KFs forward on the leading edge extension. Don't throw this out after you're finished cutting it, because it will come in handy for you later on. Okay, so there's that. So essentially, if you've never used a set of plans like this before that has, you know, some of the RC Powers plans, if you print them off on your computer, you'll have you know, ×2, meaning you obviously need to do 2 of these. This is your elevon. Obviously, I didn't label that. It's pretty self-explanatory. And this is your vertical stabilizer and rudder. So these are very easy to just, you know, once you cut one out, just use the second one as a template, or use this one that you've cut out as a template to cut out your second one. These are all pretty much all straight lines. It's very easy to do. In the next portion, I'm going to show you, after I've cut them out, I'm going to show you the technique that I like to use to make sure that I get all my hinge lines and everything else matched up correctly when I cut out the second one. And again, this you need to do a second one as well. Now, this might seem self-explanatory, but when you cut your second one out, make sure you don't put the score lines on the same side. This one is for the right-hand side, the way it is. So when you cut your second one out, don't cut the score lines on the same side, or then you're going to end up with 2 right-hand nacelles intakes, which you don't want. So just when you cut the other one out, just you know, basically just flip it over. Because these are straight lines, you can just use a ruler and then do the score lines on the opposite side. So you'll have a left and a right. I know maybe that seems a bit simplified, but believe me, I've screwed it up once in the past, and by not paying attention to that. So just a word to the wise there, so it doesn't catch you. This large piece here is the upper fuselage. This is the hatch. I probably will talk about it again later. What I do is I keep this all in one piece. I use this as a score line, and I also actually just score this line. I don't cut right through this line because I keep this all in one piece. I don't cut the hatch out for the battery bay till well towards the end of the build after I sanded and stuff. So it's just a lot easier to handle the plane. Don't cut this out until you absolutely need to, I guess is my advice there. This is a wing plate nose former, which will eventually glue onto, you know, once you mate your 2 wing halves together, it will mate onto the front and go out to the front to help form your nose. This piece it's a long, thin piece. This portion here, it's sort of, as you're looking at it right now, it's sort of flipped upside down. This will be on the top of the wing plate to help form the nose, and then this bottom spine goes down along the bottom, and that is what this bottom fuselage piece then goes over top of. This bottom fuselage piece, maybe it's been because of the way that I've always cut it out, or the tolerances on the plans are tight, or maybe I've just been putting it together wrong forever and a day, I don't know. But what I do, and I'll show you after I've cut the piece out, you'll see, I measure on the straight part here, I measure out about another millimeter, maybe 2 millimeters. I like to cut this a little bit wide, because I found in the past sometimes when I haven't done that, it's a bit of a struggle. It was a bit of a struggle for me to match the sides of this with the bottom part of the fuselage that it mates to. So I liked having a little bit extra foam. So like I say, millimeter, 2 millimeters. I also find these, I'll call them fingers here, these are going to form the bottom part of your nose. I also like to cut those, and I just eyeball this, I like to cut those a little bit wider, maybe about 1 millimeter on each side. I find it makes my life easier when I form the nose. I'd rather have a little bit more foam that I can shave off. What I've had happen to me in the past is that they've ended up being too narrow, and then when I go to push the finger in, I end up with gaps, and it makes it a much more difficult job. It's a bit of a tricky nose on this plane. It has essentially 9 fingers that all come together to form the nose, to make the scale Sukhoi nose. So anything you can do to make your life easier is worthwhile. So that's what I like to do, and we'll talk about that more later in the video. I think you'll see it actually in the next part of the video after I've cut these out. Again, I'm doing this after the fact because I buffooned it up and deleted the original one. This piece right here actually goes underneath the wing plate. So these are all cut lines. Okay, these will end up being holes. You know, as the the top and the bottom piece, the wing plate essentially is going to slide in here. So this is actually going to be on the bottom of the plane, and then all the rest of this is going to be on the top, except for this piece, which again is going to be on the bottom. You have a couple of smaller pieces that I think I will explain again. These you need two of these. These are motor mount supports that go on either side of this piece. This will actually stick out the top. That's kind of your motor mount. And then these two pieces just give you more area to glue. So you definitely want two of those. You've got two supports over here. The front nose support, which helps to form the nose, and the middle fuselage support, which I'll talk about some more as we go through the video. Over here is your canopy, and this obviously is the canopy spacer, and I'll show you step by step how I put my canopy together, because it's a different canopy than you might be used to if you've built an RC Powers plane before. And this is the canopy alignment tab. This little tab piece right here is eventually going to go in this slot here, and as you'll see later in the video, hopefully it'll make sense to you. I also, as I mentioned, on the bottom part of the fuselage, starting at about here, I also like to cut these fingers here a little bit wider, again about 1 millimeter on each side. Just to make my life a bit easier. Again, maybe it's the way that I've been cutting my foam or the tolerances, but I find cutting it slightly larger than plans, about 1 millimeter on each side, makes my life easier, a lot easier. I've basically got the plane built now as I shoot this video, and you'll see that I do have some excess foam that I will end up having to carve off, but the nose went together really easily. This obviously, this straight line here, you don't want to cut that wide, because this straight line here is going to mate to this straight line over here. So cut this part exactly the way that it shows on the plans. Okay, I think that's about it. Just talking about the wing plate here a little bit. One thing of note that I noticed when I built this stock, the way the aileron is here, if I measure this right here, this is the end of the KF, that's 1 3/4 inches, and then it's 1 3/4 inches here as well, from there to the aileron hinge line. Now that's not a problem on the top, but what I've noticed in the past when I built this stock is that on the bottom, of course, this is going to be, you're going to have your hinge line right on either side of this after you bevel it, and what ends up happening is, because this is going to go back, this part here is also, this is your bottom KF, this is going to go back 1 3/4 inches. What is going to, just so you're not shocked by this, you're either going to have to trim some of this off, or it will be over top of your hinge on your aileron, or what you can do is you can also move this back, this part of the hinge line back, say, maybe about 1/4 inch, so draw a line like that. You're going to reduce the size of your aileron by just a little bit, but it's still going to be super effective. So just know that if you're going to build it exactly stock, that there could be that issue. So if you get to that point, you're not going to be shocked. I've done it both ways actually. I've done it where I've moved this hinge line back about 1/4 inch and built the plane, and I've also built it where I've used this aileron and then trimmed this, and both of them flew just fine. But just so you're aware of that and it doesn't catch you. This is your center of gravity mark, obviously CG. So what I normally do is I just put a pin right through dead center here, and it's a very good starting point. I think I mentioned this again later in the video, but one thing about FRC Foamies planes is I found their center of gravity for starts is always been pretty much bang on. I almost never have to muck around a lot with any pitch trim if I go with their stock CFG to start with, and then you can play around with it from there depending on how you like your plane to fly. If you're going to use, when you cut this wing plate out, and if you're going to use it as a template to cut out your second wing plate. You know, when you go to draw your lines in here with the pen or whatever, your second wing plate, the holes might end up being a little bit smaller. So what I do is after I've cut the second wing plate out is then I just lay the two of them top, you know, like a mirror image, and then take my knife, and if there's any excess on the second wing plate, I just kind of, you know, using a very sharp blade, trim it out. The other option, you know, a couple of other options, probably the least environmentally friendly is to get 2 sets of these plans done, and then you can just do, you know, anything that's ×2, you can just cut out again on the second set of plans, but then you end up wasting a lot of paper because, you know, this and this and this and the canopy and the bottom fuselage, they don't need to be done again. So, or if you're really worried about it, you can always just print. The other way to do it without wasting more paper is, especially for the wing plate, if you're worried about like all these, where all these slots are, is just go into the tiled plans, and you can print off just the sheets that you need for the wing plate, and then cut out another wing plate out of your piece of foam, whatever way you want to do it. Probably, obviously, you're going to save yourself a lot of paper if you just use this one set of plans and then use these pieces you cut out as the templates. Okay, so that's sort of how I like to get my plans prepared. I also, if you're going to cut, I didn't do it on this one because I forgot, I guess too many things on my mind. Before, you can cut the piece out and then it's easier to handle, but leave the paper on it. If you want to make like triangular air vents, like I've got a couple of triangular air vents, one on either side here, and then one in the back here. I find it's a lot easier to do that. You can draw them on, measure them up, draw them out with a pencil or a pen while the paper's still on, and then cut them out, rather than doing it afterwards, because then you don't mark the foam up as bad. Anyway, just you know, little techniques that I've learned. So that's the plans prep well after the fact because of my buffoonery. As I mentioned, I deleted the wrong video that I'd already shot on this as you know I started. So you're going to see me in the next section. I'm going to talk about. I will have the parts cut out, and I will be talking about the parts, and also during this build I'm going to be talking a little bit about some modifications that I've made to this plane, and so you'll see those. I did have on the original one that I shot, I had all the modifications all drawn out, and I could talk about those. Luckily I took pictures of those, so if you're interested down the line after you've built one stock and you want to play around with some of the modifications that I've tried, please let me know. Fortunately I have them. I've kept those in picture form, and they should have all the dimensions marked on them, so you can play around with those. So that's it for the plans prep, and next we'll be talking about some more things in preparation for assembly after I've have my my parts cut out. So we'll see you in the next part. Hi everybody, back with you again. Been making some good progress on my Su35 Mark II build. As I mentioned in the first part of the build, I will also be discussing some modifications that I'm going to be making to this plane. One is to the elevons, which I've already done on the version 1, the plane that I've been showing you as an example. So what these are actually quite a bit downsized from stock. I've been really liking how they worked out on the first version that I modified. I find that it's a little bit sleeker. Personally, I like them, like the smaller surfaces, because I find they're a bit more crisp and precise. And I've also found it gives me, I have a little bit less problem with thrust vectoring stall. So you can see the line here on the outside is the stock one. This is just a design that I sort of came up with by myself. This sort of indicates the big boom where the drag chute goes on the real plane, and I just sort of modified this a little bit. But anyway, that's just something that I like to do. This is the stock one here. It does work just fine. Again, just my own personal modification for how I like to fly, which is part of the fun of these scratch builds. Okay, so that's that. I mostly got all my foam cut out, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of techniques that I use. Here you can see I've already cut out one of the, vertical stabilizers and rudder setup. And I mentioned in the first part a sort of a technique that I use if I'm going to use this as a template to make sure that I get the rudder hinges or the rudder lines in the same score lines, or and then be able to cut them out afterwards. So what I did, obviously, I'm just going to pull this pin out. Well, actually, I'll talk about the pin. You can see right here, this is the intersection of where these two lines for the hinge and for the bottom part come to. So what I've done is I've just poked a pin, you can see it coming through the other side, through this foam, and that'll be a marker so that I know what that corner is. So I'll just pull that out, and then I've already traced it out. So there you can see, it's probably impossible to see on the video. And then what I also did was, with my pen, was I marked a couple little tabs. Obviously it's pretty easy because the top of the hinge goes right to this corner here, so that's pretty easy. But then all I have to do is using this pinhole right here, is just connect my line over here and then straight up there, and then I've got my my hinge line for my second rudder and vertical stabilizer. I wanted to point this out, emphasize this, okay? If you're going to build this stock, do not cut this off, okay? So if you're going to build it stock, don't cut this off, because you want it, as I mentioned in the first part, you want it to go down through the slot and then go up against the bottom part of the fuselage for strength and for stabilization. Because of the modifications that I'm going to be making, I will end up cutting this off. So for most of the rest of the video, you're going to see me using this with this piece cut off. So once again, if you're building it stock, don't cut this off. Just leave that on as per the plans. Okay, so that's the vertical stabilizer. I wanted to point this out. Actually, I'll show you on the old test bed here. You can see right here I've got a pretty good gonk in the foam. Now that didn't happen in the air. You know, it was caused a bit by pilot error. I kind of pancaked it in pretty hard on a landing one time, and the prop, because this foam here flexed, the prop caught this and cut a chunk out of the foam. So what I noticed is, you probably won't be able to see it on the video, but there's only about, from the foam to the tip of the prop, there's maybe about 1/8 of an inch. It just maybe is where the prop disc is for this motor. This is a Focal Price 2700 kV motor, which I will be using on the one I'm building right now as well. So what I did was, to prevent that from happening, is on this, this is my one of my intake nacelle cutout, is I just measured up from this point to this point about 3/4 of an inch, drew a 90-degree angle, and then what I did from here, from this sort of intersection out to here, is I just put that in about 1/4 of an inch, and then I drew a line, just kept this line, came down here, and so you get the idea. I'm just basically taking a little bit of foam out of there, so that should give me plenty of clearance from the prop in the event that I do end up pancaking it. If I pancake it again any harder than that, hitting the prop could be the least of my worries. But anyway, that's another modification that I'm going to be doing on this build, just to make my life a little easier, hopefully. So what do we got here next? Let me just put all this down so I don't talk about the same thing twice. I wanted to show you, here's the bottom part of the fuselage. Hopefully it shows, maybe it shows up, maybe it doesn't. I mentioned yesterday, or the other day when I did the first part of this, that I like to cut this a little bit wider. So hopefully you can see the little bit of extra paper on the outside of that black line. Like I said, it's probably 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. And then you can hopefully see here, also out here where these fingers are, I just sort of eyeballed this, but I still tapered it down to the very tip when I cut this with my knife. When you're doing this finger part, you want to make sure, I find because you're sort of curving along there, make sure, I like to make sure that I have a super sharp blade in my knife, like a brand new blade. This is the type of knife here that I like to use. I get this from, I think I got this one from Home Depot. I just find it's nice, it's a metal, you know, there's no flex in this. I buy these blades when they come on special at Home Depot or any other hardware store. I get about 100 of them, so actually 200 blades, because you just flip the blade over. I probably go through, to make sure my blades are nice and sharp and I cut the foam nice and clean, I probably go through about a half a dozen of these per plane. You can also buy these things, I've found you can buy them at the dollar store, like 10 for, I don't know, $1.25, $1.50. Not really sure why it's still called the dollar store. But anyway, so you can see here that I have just widened this a little bit, sort of eyeballed it again by 1 millimeter or 2 on these fingers, just so that when I go to start forming the nose, I've got a little bit of extra foam. Just makes my life a little bit easier. So hopefully that'll work out just fine. Alright, so that's that. So I wanted to talk about this. Here, this is going to be the top part of your fuselage. And you can see that it's written hatch here. And these are scored lines, which is exactly the way that you want to treat them. They're dashed lines, you treat them like a score line. Now what I actually also do is I treat this line right here. This is going to be where your hatch is going to hinge for your electronics bay. And until I get to that point where I'm ready to cut this, I actually just score this as well, so that then I know where it is. Because your life is going to be so much easier if you just treat this like a normal score line. Then that way the top of your fuselage stays good and solid. And if you're going to do any shaving or sanding or whatever, then it's you know, it's going to stay nice and solid until you do all that. And then one of the last things I do is cut my hatch door out pretty much after I've done all my sanding and everything else. I wanted to I wrote on this several times. I've been asked questions through my YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I mentioned already. I did a video about 1.5 years ago that was a walk around on the Su35 Mark I. Well, obviously that's a walk around of a completed plane and not showing how I got to that point. This part here, I know when you're looking at the plans, maybe if it's the first time you build one, it might look a little confusing. So this part here actually slides underneath the wing plate. So the wing plate is going to go in here where these holes are, where these slots are, and this is going to go underneath it. So just don't just don't freak out when you look at that. If it's the first time you build it, that's how it goes. I know that some folks have had a bit of trouble with that, and I'm going to cover this in detail when we get to that point on the build. And also you can notice here that I did the same thing with these fingers. I didn't start widening out my cut on this outside piece here until I sort of got to where it's going to start to curve and fit with the nose. This you want to keep a nice straight line, this part right here, because this piece here is, when it scores, is going to fold over top and make the very top part of your nose. So you want these two pieces to be nice and clean here and here, so they come together well. So I think that is one thing you need to be careful of, because these things here are pretty, you know, the foam gets nice and thin, they get kind of delicate. So just be careful when you're handling these pieces that you don't jam these into the wall, or because they'll either snap off really easily, or you'll break a chunk off, and then it just makes your life a lot easier. So just when you're handling these pieces, just be extra careful. Okay, so that's the top fuselage part. Okay, so I cut my I've got my wing plate cut out. This is mostly to do with a modification that I'm going to do on this plane. I'm going to use this piece right here. The score line is probably hard for you to see, but this piece right here, this sort of triangle, this is going to stay as part of the wing plate and act as a horizontal stabilizer. On the MiG-29 V4 from RC Powers, and I think the Su35 V4 as well, which I haven't built, so I can't be 100% sure. It has a fixed horizontal stabilizer, and then this part from here back moves as the elevon. Stefan and I both have been really liking the stability that gives us in with our MiG-29s that we've been building and modifying. So I'm going to try that out on this plane as well. So all I did was, you know, before I cut it out, is I just laid my template for my elevon here on the wing plate plan, and then traced it out with the pen. So this is all one piece now. And before I marry the two wing plates together, actually, I will continue this. I will actually just cut this right off so that I don't end up gluing this piece to its mate on the other side. The technique that I showed for the vertical stabilizer and rudder, you can do the same technique with the aileron to make sure that you're cutting the aileron out the same size. Again, I just put a pin in the corners here to mark where the corner will be, and then on the you can put a little tab, draw a little tab with your pen, and then that way you can draw the lines in to score out your aileron. These lines here obviously are outlines for carbon tube for strength. I'm going to show you what I did with my first plane. I just actually moved this center spar here that goes across the wing. I actually moved this back almost to here and then ran it pretty much straight across, and I find it gives my wing, because I'm going to be using KF airfoils top and bottom, gives my wing plenty of stiffness, and just needs one piece of carbon. But again, that's just my technique that I will show you. So here you can see when I showed you the plans, the canard stuck out here if you were building the Su35. So obviously that's been cut off to build the Su35. The other thing I wanted to point out is I like to use these big fat pins here, and I just poke it right through the very center of this CG marker, and I do that way. I do that on both pieces of the wing plate. Makes my life easier, because if you forget to do that, then it's a little bit more tricky and a pain in the butt, quite honestly, to do it afterwards. So I always remember to do that. I will say one thing about FRC Foamies planes is they are almost always bang on with their CFG per the plans, which is really cool. Not to badmouth RC Powers planes, but I find their CFGs are a little bit more flexible from what I find balances the plane compared to what is stock. Like the MiG-29 V4, I've been finding anywhere from 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch ahead of the stock CFG is what's happening, but FRC Foamies planes are pretty much bang on. So that's the wing plate. I just wanted to talk quickly about some of these other little pieces here that so that you don't lose them. This is a canopy spacer, which I'll show you when we get to the point of building the canopy. And this piece, actually, this funny looking piece here, actually is to help line up the front of the canopy when you get to that point to get ready to put that on. And these two are just formers for reinforcement for the motor mount. Once you get to that point, and I'll show you that. So that's what these are for. And this obviously is going to go when we get to that point. this piece here is just going to connect up on the front here to make the rest of the nose, and I'll show you that as we get to that stage in the build. Couple things I want to point out here. Now I know, you know, this back here I've already widened out this prop slot, and maybe in hindsight, if I was to build it again, I'd just leave the chunk of foam in here to keep this strong. But this is stock right here up front here, so you got a couple pretty thin pieces of foam here. So when you're handling these wing plates, just be very, very careful that you don't end up snapping this off. I'm actually considering just cutting, once I get my wing plate together, just cutting this straight across, just you know, sort of removing the back piece so I can do all the sanding and all that sort of stuff, and then gluing it back on, just so, because I've broken these off before handling them. Another thing too, similar to the fingers, just be very careful with this, because this tapers down pretty quickly, and the foam gets pretty thin here. So just be very careful when you're handling these, that, you know, you don't snap this off. You know, lesson learned, ask me how I know that, because I've done it before, and then you end up having to, you know, do repairs to your plane before you've even had a chance to fly it. So just a couple of notes of wisdom there. So there we go. I will show you, I just wanted to show you these things here, you know, as I was going along through the foam cutting stage while the paper was still on them, so it's a little easier to show you. Again, this is modification stuff. Don't worry about doing that if you're building the stock plane and you're going to use stock elevons and stuff. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get ready to install the elevons. So next up, I will show you my technique for marrying the two wing plates together. Since if you've never done that before, you know, maybe it's a little confusing, maybe not. But anyway, I'll show you what works for me and has worked for me several times, and then we'll press on from there. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next stage. Hey everybody, again, just wanted to play a bit of a catch-up here before I got too far ahead of myself. I've done all the glue. I put foam tack. I use this foam tack glue here. It's excellent stuff. I use it for about probably 95% of the build. There's a couple things that I use, which I'll talk about here shortly, that I use epoxy or maybe the odd dab of hot glue here and there. What I do here with these, opposite these score lines, here's the score lines, you can see where I cut it out, is I just take a pencil like this, and you know, using a straight edge, I just run it along without the lead out, just this, you know, little thin. You could use probably a bamboo skewer, toothpick, whatever. And I just make a very, very small little channel in the foam. And what I use that for mostly is just a guideline, so I can lay a very thin bead of foam tack glue down, and then you know, I just take a scrap piece of foam and I squeegee it down into the little groove, and what it does is it makes an excellent little hinge for when once that glue dries, for the opposite side of the score line, and adds like zero weight to the plane. So that's the canopy. I also did the same on this is the bottom fuselage. You see the score lines there, and the hinge line with foam tack. This is obviously going to be my one of my intakes. What I like to do, I've used this now for my last 3 or 4 planes, is I use this mesh drywall tape that you can buy. I've even been able to find this at the dollar store, although the stuff from Home Depot, you know, any any do-it-yourself store is probably a little bit better quality. It tends to be a little bit stiffer. Sometimes the stuff from the dollar store tends to be you know, a little bit stretchier. It's slightly tacky on the one side, which makes it easy to place and hold. What I do here, the reason I put this here is that I find you know, your plane's going to be landing on this surface here, and so this joint takes a lot of stresses and strains over the life of the plane. So all I do is I because I have two of them, I just measure how long I need for each of the things. I pull off that length and then I just cut it in half. So these are actually inch wide. And then all I do is I take some more of the foam tack, I lay a few beads down along, and then with scrap foam squeegee it down in and just let that dry. It makes a super light, super strong hinge for for this application. So that's the intake. I do the same thing here on the fuselage, but it's one of the few planes. This line, it's hard to see, I'm sure, on the video, but because the Su35 has kind of a curved nose, drooping nose kind of thing, this is kind of curved here a little bit, so it's a little bit difficult to follow the same line on the opposite side of the foam. So this is probably the only application where I still use the old tape method, just on that one hinge line. I use this fiberglass packing tape. Well, the only place I can find this where I live in Canada is at Staples office supply, but I don't use a lot of it, so this will last me a long time. But then on the other score folds, like on the back of the fuselage, and this small one here on the front of the nose, I use the foam tack hinge just to keep things nice and light. Okay, alright, so I've also got to the point I've cut out all my KFs, and what I did, you may remember this piece here. This was the template that I used when I cut my wing plates out to make this an Su35 instead of an Su37. So all I did was I just used the template from the KF itself that comes with the plans when you download them, and then I just sort of laid them on top of the wing plate here, got everything all lined up just the way that I wanted it, and I just sort of scotch taped these two pieces together and made that into one template, and then cut out the KF. Now the reason I do this is obviously not stock, because in stock the KF that come with the plans just run straight across here. What I've been finding is by extending the KF forward and only on the top, I don't do it on the bottom. I think on the bottom it would just actually defeat the purpose of having this extra bit of foam on the top of the leading edge extension here. I just find it makes my planes just a bit more stable, and they fly smoother overall. So ever since I modified, actually I probably did it on a few planes prior, but this was one of the modifications that I wanted to add when I built this plane the first time, the one that I've been showing you with the sexy magic marker paint job. So so that's why I kept this little template. It just makes it a lot easier then for me. What I use, the foam that I use is, this is Adams Ready Board, or dollar store foam, Dollar Tree foam here, called lots of different names. I just take the paper off of it. There's a video on YouTube. I actually just buy this stuff from the dollar store. It's actually a 50-50 mixture of alcohol and water, and you just spray it liberally on the whole sheet of paper on both sides, and probably within 20 to 30 seconds the paper just starts to wrinkle, and then you can peel the one piece of paper off all at one time. It makes your life a lot easier. This is obviously, you can see, find a piece of Depron here to hold up. It's quite a bit thinner. Well, not quite a bit, but it's a bit thinner. I would say, depending on the dollar store foam you get, this is anywhere between 4 to 4.5 millimeters thick, and I find it makes a great airfoils, because it's thick enough that you still get the benefit of the KF, but it's not so thick that you know, using two thicknesses of 6 millimeter Depron on either side, then you end up with your wing being like 18 millimeters thick as opposed to, say, 15 millimeters thick. So the other thing is that when you're, I like to shape and bevel symmetrically shape the leading edge of my wings, and this stuff is it's very, very easy to sand, which I'll show you at a later stage in the video. So as you can see, I left the paper on this one. I'll take it off, but that's all I do is I cut one out with the template that comes with the plans, and then I just use it to trace out with a pen my other one. So now I've got 2 bottom and 2 top, so I'm ready to go. I just have to peel the paper off of those. So there's those. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show, you can see here, here's my my wing plate, and I've got it right now. I've just got it taped together with some masking tape. What I like to do is I like to pick, if you look at Depron, it probably doesn't show up that well in the video. This is going to be the top of my plane. It almost has like it's almost like plywood sometimes. It has a good side and a bad side. This bad side, or I won't call it bad I suppose, but it's a little bit rougher. It's quite a bit shinier. And then this side, it's much smoother and a little bit more flat. And I find it just for painting and stuff like that, it just takes the paint better, looks a little better. So I picked this as the top of my plane, which I'll explain why now in a bit. So why I run this masking tape here on the good side is that when the glue, I'm going to use 5-minute epoxy, when the glue dries and you peel this off, then you barely can see any glue at all. And on the bottom here, I'm going to end up probably, once I fold it back together, I'm going to end up with some glue squeegeed out, and you know, it's not going to look as good. So that's why I do that for the bottom. So you can kind of, you know, you line it up as best as you can. Sometimes when you put the 2 of them together, there might be a little overlap. You know, you just get a nice sharp razor knife and trim that off once it dries. So anyway, what I'll do right now is I'm just going to pause and mix up some epoxy and show you how I apply it and then how I set it up to dry. So just going to pause and I'll be right back with you. Okay, just back with you here. What I've done while I was away was I've just ripped off a piece of wax paper. Even though there's tape on this, I always like to lay anything that I'm epoxying or big long glue seams where there might be the possibility of glue leaking through. I always like to put it down on wax paper because it's easier to pull the wax paper off what I've glued than to rip what I've glued off of the surface. So you know, I just buy boxes of cheap wax paper at the dollar store or Walmart. You know, it doesn't need to be high quality, but it just keeps the glue from sticking to something you don't want. I just use 5-minute epoxy. I just get this stuff from Hobby King because it just comes in big containers. I don't use as much of this as I used to use. So you can buy those little plungers, you know, with the resin and the hardener in kind of a syringe. You can buy those now even at the dollar store for, you know, $1.50 or whatever, and it'll do you for several planes depending on whether you like to use epoxy or not. Okay, so let's get on to this. I also just mix up my epoxy on a scrap piece or a piece of wax paper. That way, when I'm done, I just take the wax paper, toss it in the garbage, and you know, it's just no mess, no fuss, no muss. So just hinge it. I just hinge it open like that. I find it works well if I just use a scrap piece of foam here, and then all I do is I just try and apply it evenly to both sides of the foam, trying not to get too much of it, you know, right next to where the gaps are. You can still cut epoxy after it dries, but it is a bit of a pain. The reason that I use epoxy for this application is it's probably a little heavier than foam tack, but as I showed you just earlier, foam tack stays flexible after it dries, which is one of its good properties. But this is a situation where I don't really want any flex. in the center of my wing. So that's why I tend to use epoxy. It's probably lighter than hot glue, and I think stronger than when it dries. And okay, so got a nice even coating on both sides, and then we just lay it down, open it back up, lay it down, and then what I like to do is take my foam, scrap foam again, and probably use the side that I haven't used yet, and I just kind of squeegee it all along the seam to get rid of the excess, and then also to drive it down into the gap of between the two pieces of foam. So you can see, you know, you're going to have this bit of epoxy showing up now on the foam, which is why I like to put this side on the bottom of the plane if I can, so you're not gonna see it. So there we go. Okay, so make sure that's good. Now what I like to do is I just use a bunch of old rattle cans of paint that I bought that I'll probably never use, but they come in handy for weights, and then I just lay them at regular intervals along the seam without putting them in the glue. Again, ask me how I know that's a bad idea. And then all this does is it just holds it down and keeps it flat while the epoxy cures. So anyway, I just give that, so here's my scrap, into the garbage we go. And then I just give that a good, I probably just, you know, it's one of those things I'll probably actually just leave this overnight, to be quite honest with you. And then once it's all dried, just peel the tape off the other side, and I've got a nice solid, strong glue joint to hold my wing plate together. All right, so I think we've caught up on pretty much everything. I won't show you how I do it. I actually do the same process when I put this piece on the nose. Again, just a much smaller surface there, but I do, I do the tape and hinge it open, put the epoxy on, and then push it back down, weight it down again, because then this gives it a nice, solid, strong, inflexible joint. The foam will probably break before the glue breaks, but if I'm breaking foam back here on my plane, I'm probably having a pretty bad day. All right, so that's enough for now, and we'll see you again in the next stage. Hi everybody, back with you again for another update on the progress of my FRC Su35 Mark II. You can see now that in the last video I showed you how I put the two wing plates together. You may be able to see now how the epoxy's dried here, where I sort of squeegeed it down on the bottom. It goes kind of yellow, but it helps to really squeegee it down and push it down into any small gaps. Here there's still a little bit of tape stuck on the top. I'll probably just take some light sandpaper and sand that off there just for looks eventually. I haven't installed this nose piece here yet. It'll go on there like that, and I'll use the same technique with epoxy like I did to put the two wing halves together. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of sanding on the trailing edge of my wing and my my horizontal stabilizer and elevons. So just to prevent me from banging that into something while I'm sanding it as I'm handling it, just makes the piece smaller to handle. But I will definitely put that on, obviously, before I proceed any further with the build. Now I used, I think I may have mentioned this already, this is 4mm carbon rod, so it's solid rod. It is actually twice as heavy as 3mm carbon tube, but because I'm not using the triangular setup here as per the plans, I probably have, I would say, I venture to guess, about the same amount of weight of carbon fiber total. I've used this on the other Su35 that I built with great success. You may be able to see here, I do still have a little bit of flex out at the end of the wing here, but because I'm going to be putting the KF4 airfoil on that, that will help stiffen that wing up out here. I would strongly suggest sticking with the plans and the suggestion on the plans. If you're just building this as a simple flat wing plane with no KF airfoils, then definitely go with the triangular shape of the 3mm carbon tube to give yourself the best strength overall for your wing. Back here, and this is not on the plans, but it's just something that I like to do and I've done on all my planes. I always put some kind of reinforcement here in my elevons, since the elevons do take a lot of punishment in the prop wash. And because the elevons are almost always moving as you fly your plane, no matter what you're doing. You're either climbing, descending, turning, and they do, like I said, they do take a lot of punishment in the prop wash. So just for insurance more than anything else, I always like to put a 3mm carbon tube in my elevons just for strength. So you can see here, this is modified. A little easier to see here on the hinge side. I borrowed this idea from the RC Powers MiG-29 version 4. I really like how it makes the back end of that plane nice and stable. So I'm going to try it out on this platform as well and see how it affects the performance. So that's why I have like a separate horizontal stabilizer and then like a standard, almost like a hinge elevator, although it will be acting as an elevon because it will have elevator and aileron inputs. So if you build yours stock, you'll have more of a setup similar to this. Now obviously this is not a stock elevon, it's a modified elevon, but you'll get the idea. Your hinge will just go along here if you build it by the plans, and you'll have this whole surface will be free moving, whereas I'm only going to have a smaller surface than that moving on the plane I'm building now, just to test that out and see how it works on this platform. Because as I said, I found it works exceptionally well on the RC Powers MiG-29 version 4, so I want to see how it works on this plane. Okay. I've also hinged, as you can see, my ailerons. These are modified ailerons that I've used. I've found work really well on the plane that I just showed you, so that's what I'm going with on this plane as well. I've also hinged my rudders and vertical stabilizers with the foam tack glue and the fiberglass drywall tape. Now on here, it's probably hard to see, but on here and on the rudders, I didn't put this drywall mesh tape right up to the edge. I left about 1/4 of an inch back, and the reason that I did that is I'm going to be sanding this with sort of a symmetrical, sanding both sides of it to make sort of a symmetrical edge for aerodynamic smoothness and to reduce drag. So I've found that if I put this all the way out to the edge and then go to sand it, because of the glue and the tape, it ends up making it quite messy, because then the tape goes, you know, it gets all feathery, and it just ends up not being as nice a finish as I would like. So I just left about 1/4 of an inch from the edge with that tape. I forgot to mention, I also did the same thing here. I left this tube, I'm about 5/8 of an inch back from the edge here, and the reason being is that once I put my KF4s on here, I'm going to be symmetrically shaping the front edge of my wing as well, and I didn't want this to end up being in the way, because part of this is going to be cut back after I put the KF on when I shape it. So I left that back so that it won't get in the way. I realized that after I put all this stuff together, I just wanted to demonstrate to you the process that I use to make my hinges with foam tack tape and the drywall fiberglass drywall tape. So anyway, all I did was I just got a couple pieces of scrap foam here, and I've beveled a hinge on them. And I'm just going to show you. There's many ways to do this. This is the one that I prefer to use, and I find it works really well for me. So what I do first is I take the foam tack, and right along the edge here where the two pieces are going to meet, I just run the smallest bead, just a very, very small bead, right along that very sharp edge on both pieces. Okay, so just very thin bead right along there. Trying my best not to get too much down into the angled part, which will be the bottom of the hinge. Then what I do is I'll just try and orient myself here better, is I push them together like that, and then I just normally take my finger or a piece of scrap foam and I just smooth that out. Now, in all honesty, if you're building a really light plane and it's not going to take a lot of punishment, you can put just even another little bead right on that seam and squeegee that down. On my F-18 version 3, which I have 345 flights on now, the rudders and my ailerons have hinges that are just made out of foam tack glue like this, and they've held up exceptionally well for over a year now in just about every weather condition. But this fiberglass drywall tape provides more strength, and I think it just provides a little bit more stiffness to that hinge area. So now that I've got this together, this drywall tape has some adhesive on it, so you can lay it in place and it's not going to move around much. So I just, do my best to center the hinge on the tape. Then I take my foam tack again. I just run a few beads, making sure that I've got some out near the edge, some along the hinge where the actual hinge is, just kind of lay some down there. And then what I do is I take a scrap piece of foam and I just really work that well, making sure that I push it right out along the edges so that the tape is not going to have the tendency to want to lift, and then just kind of really rubbing it in, just giving it a good squeegeeing in there so that it works right down into the mesh. And this will dry actually quite quickly now that you've got it spread thinly like that. And then I'll just probably leave that, set that aside, and let it set up really well before I start playing around with it at all. So again, fairly simple, just little drywall or a little foam tack just on the edge. That type of hinge actually will work really, really well in most situations, but the drywall tape just makes it a little bit more durable and also gives a little bit more stiffness to that area where the hinge is. So there's that. All right, so next up, basically I will, by the time I come back the next time, I will have all of this stuff sanded, and I'll have the nose piece attached here on the front. And then what I will do is I'll dry fit the center former pieces and show you how all that works. And then we'll get on to attaching the fuselage, which is a little bit different than what you might be used to if you built an RC Powers score and fold plane, or maybe some other score and fold plane. It's not impossible, but it's just a little bit different and takes a little bit more time and patience maybe than what you may be used to. So that's it for now, and we'll catch up with you in the next portion of the video. Hey everybody, back for just a very quick update. I know this looks kind of weird since my last shot, but I just, in order to prevent myself from breaking this wing plate in half while I was sanding it, I just cut it off nice and clean, and I'm going to re-glue that back on. But I just wanted to show you, I'm going to be showing you something here shortly using this small piece, so I just kept it off for now. So I sanded, this is definitely not anything you need to do just to get the plane flying. It'll fly just fine without all this sanding and stuff. It's just something that I really like to do with my planes. I've just been finding probably the last half dozen or so planes that I've built, I've really focused on sanding leading and trailing edges, and just a good sanding job all over the plane. I find it's almost like buying myself free speed, really, because it makes the plane so much you can just, I can just feel it actually as it's going through the air, how much sleeker it is. So I actually just eyeball it. You may not be able to see it here, but what I do is I just eyeball sort of a taper, you know, sand a little bit on one side, just check it, sand a little bit on the other side, until I get a fairly uniform taper. And I did it also on the front part of the prop slot and the trailing edge of the wing for now. This is the back edge of the prop slot. I did that all around all of the horizontal stabilizer and the elevon on both sides again. And I also did the rudders and the vertical stabilizers. Now I know it kind of rounds off these corners here, so if having nice sharp corners is important to you on your plane, then maybe that's not anything you want to mess around with. It is a bit of a fussy job, and like I said, it's definitely not required to build this plane to get it to fly just great, but I find it helps my planes fly even just that little bit better, so it's more just a personal thing. I actually use, not that you're going to be able to tell the grit, I use this is 150 grit that I use to take the first little bit of it off of the foam. You could probably use rougher grit if you wanted to, but you'd have to be very, very gentle with your sanding, because one thing, this is Depron, which is what I use primarily. Even if with this stuff, or even if the 220, if you sand too heavily, you'll actually tear the foam and tear gouges out of it, which then makes a big mess. So I like to use 150 grit to get the bulk, about 90% of the stuff off, and sand it the way that I want it. And then I follow up with 220 grit, and just really, just take my time and really kind of blend it in and smooth it out as much as possible. I think it not only looks better, but it, as I said a couple of times already, I find it makes the plane feel much slipperier through the air, and it's almost like free speed. And what I've really noticed as well is, when I'm gliding or coming into land, is taking that extra time to really smooth the airplane off. It makes my approaches to landing a lot longer, but what it tells me is that the plane is obviously sliding through the air much more efficiently, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. Means that you don't need quite as much power to go as fast, kind of thing. One thing I wanted to mention, I didn't mention the last time, I just put my carbon fiber reinforcements, I actually just put them in with foam tack. So once I cut my channel, and then I take the rod and I sort of just drag the rod back and forth through the channel a couple times just to compress the foam down. Dry fit it in there first, make sure that it's going to work, that it's going to fit in there okay. And then all I do is I just run a bead of foam tack, pardon me, down along the channel here, and then I take the rod again and I run it back and forth once, just to kind of really spread the foam tack out and make a nice even thin layer in the channel, and then just push it in there and let it cure. I know some folks like to put tape or even the fiberglass tape over top of that, and you can do that too. Quite honestly, I've touched wood, I haven't had a problem with any of the rods popping out on me or anything else, so I don't bother doing that. This rod anyway is going to be covered up primarily with the rest of the plane in KF airfoil, so not really too much of a worry about that. So what I did want to show you here in this stage, you can see I've done one side already, or maybe you can't see because the tape is transparent, but what I like to do on my elevons, it's the only hinge that I do it on. As I've mentioned in a previous part of the video, the elevons take the most punishment of any part of your plane because they're in the prop wash, and anytime you're maneuvering your plane, if you're using elevons, they're moving. So this hinge takes a lot of punishment. And although this fiberglass drywall tape is strong and durable, depending on its quality or how long it's been around, the little fibers in it, I found over time they can get brittle, and I've had some of them crack on me. Or one of the worst things to happen is, if I'm not going to bang it, but if you're putting this in the car and you bang it sort of this way, pushing against the hinge, it'll crack this. And I've had it happen actually on my latest MiG-29. I had it happen to me where I had about a 2-inch section. I noticed where the fibers had split, and fortunately I had put tape on the other side, so it kind of saved my butt there to keep my elevon from continuing to rip off. If that does happen to you, I've had it happen to me on a couple planes. It happened on the my original Su35 Mark II that I've been showing you in the video already. All I do is I just put another piece of this stuff down on top, you know, do the same method with the foam tack, and then the only pain in the rear end is if you you know, if you painted the plane, then you have to just sort of paint that part of the tape if you don't want it showing up. But anyway, okay, so I've done one side already, and I just want to show you the technique that I use. I've already pre-cut my tape here. I use this. This is 3M tough Scotch duct tape. I can't get 3M extreme tape, packing tape here in my part of Canada that a lot of people maybe in the US or other parts of the world use. I found that this works the best. There's the Duck, you know, D-U-C-K brand duct tape, which is very popular. This stuff I find is better because it has, I know it's going to be hard to see, maybe I'll put it against the purple here, but this has a lot more fibers in it than the Duck brand duct tape. A lot of ducks there. Anyway, and I also find the adhesive on it to be better than the Duck brand. It is a bit more expensive, but I can get it at Home Depot where I live here. So what I do is I take the hinge and I fold it right back on itself, like that, and I take my tape. Make sure I get this set up right here. I take my tape, orient this, and I like to put it on the elevon part first because I only have so much surface area on there. So just lay it down and then give that a good press there first. Make sure that's good and secure. Rub out all the wrinkles and the bubbles, and then just pick the piece up like this, and then I very gently, just, you know, with a little bit of tension, I smooth it down on that angled part. So what I'm trying to do here is I want to make sure that I don't have any wrinkles or bubbles or binding that's going to be down in that beveled part of the hinge, which, you know, can cause the hinge to bind. And then just flip it the other way. Again, just kind of gently pull it and just press the tape right along the foam there to get as many of the wrinkles out as you can, and lay it down, and then just finish it off on the other side. So, you know, the hinge, it will naturally now want to stay like that. So the hinge is going to be, it's going to feel kind of stiff. So before I hook up my servos, I work this hinge you know, several times till it kind of loosens up, and then once you attach your servos, you know, the thing's not going to want to pop up on you like that. But you know, this doesn't add a lot of weight, but it sure adds, in my mind, a lot of insurance. I just want to show you a couple of other things here. Obviously, you're building this stock. You're not going to muck around with my my modification, so that wouldn't be an issue here. But what I did was I put a little bit of the fiberglass drywall tape along this, this, which is sort of, it represents the boom where the drag chute goes on the real Sukhoi, and I just to stiffen it up. So and then all I did was I had what happened right here was, especially after I was sanding it, I ended up with a very tiny amount of foam here by this carbon rod, which is kind of my my bit of erroneous buffoonery there. But anyway, all I did then was I took just a tiny bit of epoxy, and I just smeared it in there, and smeared it along this little tiny bit of foam here. It makes it really stiff and strong, and now that there's tape over top of it, it's also going to be strong. So all this does is this makes this this little piece here very, very stiff and strong. So hopefully, you know, if I gonk it or whack it in the car, it's not going to snap it off. These are mostly just for aesthetics than anything else. They may not be anything that you like. And again, if you're building in stock, you're not going to have these there anyway. So I will have to cut this tape obviously out of this slot. This is where my nacelles will go, and my control horn will be going out in here somewhere. So I'll also take my you know, an extra super sharp little X-Acto knife, and I'll just cut a little bit of the tape out of there, because I don't want to be gluing my control horn down through the tape, just you know, because it'll prevent a good glue bond. But anyway, I'll talk about that more when we get to that point. Alright, so yeah, just got to glue this tail section back onto the rest of the wing plate. Again, that's not part of the build process that you need to be worried about if you're not going to be messing around with any sanding or stuff. I just did it because I've had it happen to me before where I've been doing that, and this thin little piece just snapped off. So this time I just cut it off nice and clean so that it, you know, I wasn't in danger of breaking it. It just actually made this smaller piece much easier to work with while I was sanding it. So I'll glue that back together, and then come back and we'll start to put the fuselage and the wing plate together. So we'll see you in the next portion. Hi everyone, back for the next phase here on the Su35 Mark II build. One quick thing I didn't mention is when you do sand, this is something that works well for me, is when you do sand, the foam tends to have a bit of a static charge to it, and the little bits of dust will actually stick to the plane. I always like to do it outside, and especially on windy days, I will actually wear a mask just so I don't breathe in the, you know, one of those little paper masks you get at pretty much any hardware store, just so I don't breathe the stuff in. But what I do after I sand it is I take the vacuum cleaner and I use that little brush attachment, you know, that you use for smooth surfaces like coffee tables and whatever, and I just give it a nice little vacuum. It tends to pull all that dust off there, and then it makes your life a lot easier when you start applying tape and glue and paint and all that other sort of stuff. It will just bond to the actual foam better. Anyway, just another little tip there. So I'm just going to dry fit this this next stage. I'm going to dry fit the pieces together for you just to show you how it goes together, and then, you know, I'll glue it on my own time. So this is going to be the top of my plane, and this is like the spine or the former, I guess, if you want, for the nose and the fuselage. So essentially, it's, you know, it's pretty simple. Just slide it right in there. Nice, you know, just take your time so you don't break anything. Helps if you hold it up here a little bit. So then once you kind of got that snugged all the way in there, oops, then you go along and along the bottom here, just insert these tabs into the slots, and then you've got this one piece you can see here sticking up, which is going to be part of your motor mount. Now, don't freak out that you've cut something wrong. You've actually cut it right. If you may not be able to see here on the video, but it actually bends the Sukhoi 37, 35. Pretty much all the Sukhois have that characteristic sort of drooping nose. So FRC has put that into the plans. You may be able to see just a gentle curve here. So this actually should, as you put it on there, it should actually curve down. Okay, so don't think you've done anything wrong. Now you may have to this, you can see here I've got a bit of a gap here, so when I go to glue that, I'll have to pin that or tape that down, and then you want to make sure all along the bottom here where this joins, you know, make sure that that's good and snug too, so that the plane, the wing plate and the nose get that nice gradual bend to them, so that you get that characteristic nose, Sukhoi nose. So there's the main part. So what I like to do when I pin stuff, I actually like to use these little pins here with the little plastic ball thing on the end. Again, I get these from one of my favorite stores, the dollar store. And what I find actually works best, obviously I'm not gluing it right now, but I'll just show you how if I'm going to pin two pieces together, I actually like to put it in sort of at an angle. And I find that gives me a better grip to pull the two pieces together. And then sometimes if I have a part where it's really tricky, I'll put another pin in sort of at the opposite angle, and I find that that really will help hold it together, and then just, you know, leave those in there. The nice thing about using these little small pins, especially on the outer portion of your plane, is it's not going to leave a big gaping hole if you use a bigger pin, and they're easier to get out because they've got the little ball on them. And I also use, you know, in certain places, like maybe on this nose here, to hold that down, I'll just use a plain old masking tape. I get, again, rolls of that. I get that from the dollar store. It doesn't work that well as actual masking tape when I paint, I don't find, but it's good for holding pieces together, and it's not expensive. So so now you've got that piece in there, and then this is the nose support, I think it's called on the plans, if I remember correctly. But it goes right up in here, so you just kind of fit that down into that slot. Now, one thing too, it's important, I found it's really important to dry fit all these pieces, because sometimes if, depending on how you cut it, you want this to be, you know, fairly even with the sides here, so that when you go to form the nose, you don't, you know, you're not working against it to get the nose formed properly. As well, I want to make sure that this top piece here is even with this nose former. So it's important to dry fit. You may have to shave a little tiny bit off. And then sometimes what I also notice, you know, sometimes when I cut the foam, you know, I don't always hold my knife perfectly up and down. So, pardon me, this might be angled a little bit, so I'll just shave off what I need there just to make sure the piece fits exactly the way that it should. I know it seems a bit anal, but believe me, from experience, if you make sure that these pieces here are just the way they're supposed to be, it'll make shaping the nose much easier. So that, again, that would just pop in there. So I'll just dry fit it, and, you know, that'll get glued in. And then these are two sort of reinforcements for the motor mount. There's kind of only one way they go, and they just slide right in along that gap there. Like so. Oh, this one's been a little bit difficult. Oh, there we go. Like so, and then that just gives you a nice, a good solid backing for your motor mount. So I like to try and get them, again, this is another part where you can dry fit them, and if you find that, you know, maybe you've got a little bit of an angle or whatever, you know, you can cut it, trim it down with a nice sharp razor knife, or even sometimes after I put it in there, if it still doesn't look great, a little bit of sandpaper, or you know, like a nail file, those cardboard nail files that you can get, just, you know, kind of smooth that down so that when you go to put the motor mount on, you're not fighting against some kind of little bump or angle. So there we go. So there's basically the former part. So I'm going to go away now, and I'm going to glue this, make sure that it's good and solid, and then we'll move on to the next part, which is putting the fuselage on. Forget my head if it wasn't screwed on right. The other thing I wanted to cover in this portion, actually, because this might be a good time to do it, you know, when you're getting busy and excited with your build. This is the canopy, obviously. So what I used the foam tack method, where I put foam tack on the opposite side of all the score lines to act as a hinge. And so I've already cracked all those score lines. And this is the method that I like to use. I found has worked best for me on these FRC Foamies planes for the canopy. This is a canopy called the canopy spacer that's on the plans. So what I like to do is right in here, sort of on this little seam here, again, I'm just going to dry fit this for now, is I just sort of put that in the center of that little seam, and then what I do is I form this this part right here first. So again, you know, I'll obviously when I glue it together, I'll take a little bit more time. But I'll glue this seam and glue the canopy around the canopy spacer. And then normally what I actually like to do is this is a good time to actually use tape. I'll just put a nice piece of masking tape over top of here just to kind of hold this together. And then I leave that and let that dry. And then I've got a good solid base to work from, and then I can glue the rest of the canopy, or even while I've got that taped, sometimes I'll just glue it. Now, normally the easiest way for me is, you know, just the canopy's very well thought out. So just again, I just kind of fold it, glue these seams here, glue this piece here on the back, and life is good. And then let that set up. And don't worry if you have you know, little bits on the seams sticking out. You can always clean those up with your razor knife or a little bit of sandpaper. So anyway, like I said, this might be a good time or part of the build, or you can do it at any time, but I always seem to forget, and then I'm like, oh, I need to put my canopy on, then I've got to wait around for my canopy to dry before I can put it on. So this is kind of around this stage of the build is when I'll do that. So that's the method I like to use for that. Alright, so that's it for this phase. I'm going to glue this all together like I mentioned, and I'll be right back with you on the next phase, and we'll actually start putting the fuselage on. So we'll see you in the next part. Hi everybody, back with another update to the Su35 Mark II build. I'm going to try something actually completely new this time on this build. As I showed you before, when you cut this part out, this is the main part of the top fuselage, as well as actually part of the bottom fuselage. These two strips here are actually going to go along the bottom of the wing plate, and because the nose kind of curves, and it's a fairly long distance to slide all the way back. In the past, when I built this, it's not impossible to do with these pieces on there, but you work against a lot of different angles, and more than once I've actually just snapped these off and then had to glue them back on anyway. So what I decided to do this time to make my life a little bit easier was I just cut them off, and you can see here, just to make sure that I match the cut lines where I've cut them, I just put left and right so that I match them up okay, and I'll show you how those go on the bottom after we get the top piece on. I left about 1 inch. Eventually this slot here is going to match up with the back part of this slot here. So I left this little tiny bit here on the bottom just so that that can align and help me square things off. I just want to point out a couple things here. You'll notice these slots here are actually double wide, double the width. So you're going to want to put, when you put these slots on, and I'll show you again when I put it on, but you're going to want to make sure that the slots on this fuselage go on the inside of this double slot, because there's going to be another piece for your nacelles, your intakes and your nacelles that are going to go on the bottom, that are going to be on the outside here. So make sure when you glue it on, you don't glue it to the outside, because then you're going to have problems when you go to fit your nacelles on later on in the build. Now, this is the middle fuselage support here. I mentioned probably earlier in the build, I probably won't use this. I've found that the fuselage is quite stiff without it, so just to save, I don't know, a gram of weight maybe, I won't use it. But what I want to say is now, do not, I repeat, do not put this on before you try and slide the canopy on. I mean, you don't really have anywhere to put it on, or to figure out where it would go anyway. But don't glue this on before you slide the fuselage on, and you'll see why. Because you just would not be able to get the fuselage on. You'd end up having to cut this off and put the fuselage on. So don't put this on yet. So we'll just lay that to the side. Okay, so we're going to try this this new method with those little long pieces on the bottom cut off. So I've already cracked all my score lines on the top fuselage. I didn't do this, show you this piece before. I actually also cut out some little triangular sort of NACA style vents. I just like to have something that allows a certain amount of airflow, even though winter's coming up and cooler weather's coming up where I am. I still like to have some good airflow going through there. And the important thing is, if you do cut these vents, any vents anywhere in the front of your plane, is you always want to have some kind of good venting for the air to get out the back, so it doesn't actually create drag. It may still create a certain amount of drag, I don't really know, I don't have a wind tunnel. But anyway, minor details. Alright, so I showed you in the last part, I've got all this all glued on, my front nose support, my spine, everything's all nicely hardened and glued on there, and my my little motor mount supports in the back there. So it's a bit of a fussy process, but just be patient with it. I think it's going to be a lot easier. I've already dry fitted it once, and it was certainly a lot easier with these little pieces cut off. And don't worry about it, because where these are going to get glued back on, it's not a major part of the plane that's going to take a lot of stress. So it's, you know, you're not too worried about the fact that you've had to cut the foam and then re-glue it, I don't think, anyway. Alright, so essentially we just have to sort of slide this on. So these tabs here, 2 tabs on either side, those are going to stay on the top. So very, very gently we want to get this into the slots where these very thin pieces of the leading edge slats are. So, okay. So we got past the first part of it. So then it's just a matter of very gently sliding that back. So you can see I've got this bottom piece here on the bottom, and we're just, sometimes it just helps if you just sort of work it, you know, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch on either side. Okay, so now I've got these 2 pieces are now past the back of the slot, so the rest of it should be quite easy. And then just again, very slowly, just gently, sometimes it helps to just, there. Okay, so now we've got this butted all the way into that slot, into the, where the lurks are here, and then our tabs should just go right down in the slot there. Okay, so there you go. So that seemed to be a much easier way to do it than leave these on. So anyway, this as I probably have mentioned before in the video, this build style is very similar for other FRC planes like the F-15 Mark II, the Su-37 Mark I. So once you sort of do one and see how it goes, then life is a little bit easier. So I'm not going to glue anything right now, but I'm just going to dry fit it. Okay, so like I said again, make sure that when you do glue it, you might have to just kind of you know, hold it square, keep it square, and put the tabs on the inside of those holes where there's a double, where the double slot is. Okay, so let's pretend for a minute that we've glued that top piece on, and then the bottom, these 2 bottom pieces are now going to go. Okay, so this would be the right side. Yeah, the right side of the plane. I always get, sorry, that's why I'm a terrible inverted pilot. I always get disoriented when the plane's upside down. Okay, so you see there's a slot right here for this tab. So that just goes right in there, like that. So, you know, now I'm going to glue this back on, line that up. And then as you go back along here, there's not really any other tab to align it. But when you glue it, just make sure that it aligns with, here's your tab here from the top. Just make sure that it aligns with that when you glue it. Okay, so there's that one, and then I'll just dry fit this one as well on the other side. Okay, same sort of thing. So I'll glue all of that up. All right, and this is the bottom part of your fuselage. Now you might have remembered, to help myself out, I actually cut this just a tiny bit wider, just to make life easier. And I also cut about an inch off the back here, just so that I would have easier access to when I go to glue my motor mount on. You don't have to do that, like I said before. It's just some lessons learned from doing a few of these builds. So then I would, obviously I'm just dry fitting this. I would make sure that this was all glued and nice and solid now before I start to put this on. But this is, again, has 2 long score lines. I just like to crack those before I put it on. And then it's just a matter of fitting those tabs and those slots together. There's 3 of them. Okay, and actually what I normally do, just to make my life easier, is I normally take this as I put this bottom piece on. So many moving parts here being dry fitted. So as you see, this just kind of bends down just a tiny little bit, and then it will. You just have to kind of play around with it a little bit. It will glue on to these side pieces here. So I normally glue it up to about here, so that it doesn't interfere with my shaping the nose later on. And then once I get this, again, you'll probably want to pin this down, because this bottom piece is going to curve a bit along here to match the curve of the Sukhoi nose. And what I like to do is, when I glue this piece on, is I'll run the bead of glue. I'll just pop that off again. I'll run the bead of glue all the way down here, and then right down here along the nose. It just makes my life easier. And then this center, let's get her back on there. And then this center nose here, this center finger if you want, that just goes right along that nose former. And then I just normally sort of just pin that right on there like that, and then just let the whole thing dry all as one piece. Again, it's probably easier to glue all this first, this centerline piece first. Let that dry, make sure that it's good and straight, and then do all your bending and shaping with these 2 side pieces to glue this right along this bottom piece of the bottom fuselage there. So that's basically the fuselage. Again, by the time I come back, I will have all of this glued on, and we can talk about it some more, and then we'll get on to the next portion, which will be forming the nose. Okay, so hopefully I explained that in a way that that is not too difficult to understand. Like I say, I think that was a cutting these little pieces off here. Along the bottom, that seemed to really make life a lot easier, because if not, you can imagine as this thing is curving and you're pushing these and you're pushing the top. I have had these snap off on me on other Su35, 37 builds, and it just makes, I think doing it this way will just make life a lot easier. And again, this is not really, this is not a high stress area on the plane. So just gluing that back is not gonna hurt anything in my humble opinion. And then if the plane snaps right in half right there, well, I guess I'll eat my words. So so anyway, so there we go. Again, I'm just gonna slide this off, because I need to actually to glue it on. Sometimes I find it's easiest once you slide it on, and then you can kind of work the glue in underneath. Because if I put all the glue along there and then slide it, sometimes it gets a little bit messy, and if I don't slide it on completely straight where it's going to glue, then I end up with glue smeared all over the plane. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you how to glue your plane. You can figure that out, but that's a sort of a technique that's worked for me. So I'll just very gently slide that off like that, and there you go. So that was the fuselage assembly. So again, when we come back, I'll have that all glued together, and then we'll get working on shaping the nose. I did end up putting my canopy together here, you can see. So that's just drying right now. Looks pretty good so far. There'll be a little bit more fitting and shaping of that once we actually mate that to the plane. But so that part is done. Okay, so that's it for this stage, and we'll see you next time to start forming the nose. Alright, so the Su35 Mark II build is really starting to come along now with the fuselage being mated to the wing plate. So you can see I've obviously glued these long pieces back on after cutting those off so that I could have an easier job of sliding the top fuselage on. I've also glued the bottom piece of the fuselage down. So what you might have to do, even though I cut this a little bit wider, depending on where these two pieces end up right here, you may still have to sort of you know, kind of bend it in a little bit, and that's why it really helps to use masking tape. So I just ran the glue, sort of a very thin bead of glue, right along this piece here, and then bent it down, and then just went you know, every few inches with some masking tape, and you know, just kind of bent things gently as need be to make it all fit together. So I think it turned out really well. I actually glued it right up to about here, sort of where the back of this actually I guess that would be where the front of the canopy is, just so that I would still be able to move these fingers around as need be to start shaping the nose. One thing I wanted to show you as well here, hopefully you can see that middle fuselage support. You know, now is a good time to put that in there. Like I said, I personally haven't found that there's really been any problem at all with the strength of the fuselage, so I don't necessarily put it in. Again, you may, depending on how you've ended up with your nose, with your fuselage as you put it on, you may have to trim this a little bit. You know, if it's not going in there right away, just trim a tiny bit off at a time until you can get it to fit in. If you try and push it back there too hard, you're going to pop that up, and then you're going to have to re-glue this back on. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, this eventually will be the hatch here, but I keep this all glued and part of that until I'm absolutely ready. I will actually keep this on here until I finish doing all the, pardon me, the sanding and everything else. It just makes my life a lot easier. Alright, so the main focus of this portion is talking about forming the nose. So you can see, as I mentioned, what I was going to do is this bottom piece has, at the front here, actually has sort of 3 fingers. So when I glued this bottom piece on, I extended the glue all the way forward and actually glued it right onto that nose former already. So that's sort of the first piece of the nose formed. Then what I do, I'll just say this right now: if you've never built a score and fold plane before, as I've probably mentioned already in this video, this may not be the best choice for your first plane. It has a very scale looking nose, but it is a bit more, I would say maybe more sort of intermediate build than somebody who's just starting off. There's 9 fingers in total here to shape this nose, so it takes some time and some patience. So I mean, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be your first build if you really want to, but it's probably not, in my opinion, maybe not a good choice. Maybe second build. So anyway, so we've already got that glued down, and then the next part you can see. So here's the other 2 pieces of the bottom part of the fuselage. And what I've done now, while this is still open, is I've taken these are sort of the 2 widest pieces here. You can see where the pins are, and I've glued those. And the reason that I did that now, it's probably a little hard for you to see, but I was able to, you know, with this still open, then I was able to run my glue down along here so that I could pin these 2 pieces right along the wing plate, and then pin them together up here at the front. So they're probably completely dry right now, so I can take the pins out anytime. Then the next stage that I would do is, for the nose, is my very well organized work area here. You wonder how I get anything done, but anyway. So then the next portion that I would do is this top part of this nose. Now, basically, you may also, I've actually, even though I've talked at length in previous part about trimming this, I've actually had to trim it even a little bit more just to get this nose, top part of this nose to fit properly without forcing it. Like, you don't want to force it to the point that you end up ripping these, you know, because I've just got foam tack glue here. You may use tape, but I've just got foam tack glue here. So I don't want to force these. I want it to be a snug fit, but I don't want to force them to the point where I rip the glue joint. So basically, this is actually a fairly easy one, because you just kind of fold these together, fold those two top pieces, so you can run some glue down the center here, and then glue on the tab, and then this would be the next part that I would do. Now from that point forward, really it's just a matter of once that's all firm. So then basically you've got your bottom, the two main side pieces, and your top piece done. And then what I like to do is, you know, tape those down and then just leave them. I just leave them and let them glue, you know, let the glue set up nice and strong. Because there's really no easy way to tell you how to go about the rest of it. And we all cut our noses differently. So for these other four pieces, these four here, the bottom, these two on the bottom and these two on the top, what you're basically just going to have to do is you're just going to have to kind of bend them and fold them, squeeze them in there as you know, as you can. The main reason that I cut, as I mentioned before, like you see here, when I go to push this down in there, I'm going to have a pretty good bit of foam here sort of sticking out. So that's obviously not going to look real great. But what I would rather have is to be able to shave or sand that off than have this too narrow, and then when I push it down in there, I end up with a gap. So it's always easier to, in my opinion anyway, it's always easier to take away some extra foam than it is to add in foam afterwards, because then you just end up with cutting more foam, more glue, and you probably end up with more shaving and sanding anyway. So I would just rather have slightly larger pieces and then sand and shave them down. And then it also allows you to really, you know, create sort of a work of art there if you want, once you get it together. So, like I said, the only thing that I would really recommend is when you glue this bottom piece on, just go ahead and glue that all the way along to the front of the nose. Glue these two big side pieces here while you have this top part open, so you can get the glue down in there. Then your next step would be to glue this top part. Again, you got you know, you got to put glue down here, and glue on the insides of these two things to get them to fit together. And again, it's a good opportunity to use pins or masking tape or whatever. And again, I would just, once you get it set in place, just leave it, because as soon as you start pushing these other pieces in, you could end up popping the thing off if the glue hasn't quite set. So good idea just to leave it alone. So if you're wondering what this little gap is here, that's going to be where this is sort of the canopy, kind of, I guess, a canopy alignment thing if you want. And that's going to go in there sort of in the next step, and then the canopy aligns over top of that. So don't worry, you haven't cut anything. I know it doesn't, there's no tab there, but that little piece is going to go in there. Alright, so that's basically all I can tell you about with the nose. Like I said, you just have to kind of be patient. I know it's a fussy little thing, and it may get frustrated. If you start finding yourself getting really frustrated, just put it down and walk away from it for a while, and then come back to it. It's definitely worth the patience and the time to form it. And then, like I said, if you do have extra foam sort of sticking out, like I'm going to end up having down here, you can always sand and shave that away with a sharp razor knife, to make your nose look good. So I'm just going to grab my other plane here. So, you know, you can see, like, I know this is dirty and a little bit gonked up, but this nose here, I used sort of the same technique. I cut the pieces a little bit bigger, and then I was able to nicely shave it and sand it down. So even though it's kind of dirty and it has been dinged up a little bit, I was really happy with how this nose came out on this plane. And I'm sure that this one will be just as nice. So anyway, like I said, take your time, be patient, and if you have extra foam sticking out, don't worry. You can always shave it off or sand it down. So I'll finish putting my nose together, and then we'll come back and get on to probably dry fitting the nacelles and the canopy, and then pretty much we're done the assembly of the airframe, and then it'll just be getting into electronics and that sort of thing, KFs and paint. So we're in the home stretch here now, I think, and I'll see you in the next portion. Hi everybody, just got my nose basically all finished up here. Whoops, on my Su35 Mark II. I wanted to show you what I did here. Once I had this nose piece, this center nose piece here together and secured down, I basically had, you've got these top two pieces and these bottom two pieces right here are sort of left. So what I ended up doing was I sort of I glued them in. And then what I did to hold them was I sort of just went in a crisscross pattern. So I've got a piece of tape that goes from this one here on the top down to this one here on the bottom, and then from another piece of tape from this one here on the bottom up to this one here on the top, and it seems to be holding them in there really well. So time will tell when I pull the tape off, but that seems to be working out well, rather than trying to individually put each one in there. So here you can see probably I probably cut this piece obviously a little bit too big, even though you know, I widened it by about 1 millimeter. Maybe that was even way too much, but anyway, you never know until you experiment a little bit. But that'll be very easy. The glue joint is right nice and solid right down in here, so that'll be very easy for me to shave that off with my knife and then sand it down. So while we're here, I might as well just press on here and show you how I dry fit the other stuff. Now I like to use these once I sort of have a plane together, you know, with the fuselage and the wing plate. These are just a couple of scrap pieces of 2x4, and it just helps give me, you know, it's nicely adjustable. I can adjust them sort of whatever way I need to lay my plane down to work on, and then also gives me a little bit of ability to sort of press down without bending or breaking something, hopefully. So I've already been playing around a little bit with my canopy. So as I mentioned before, this little piece right here, I've actually already trimmed it down a little bit. This little piece right here is sort of the canopy guide, or to secure the canopy in the front. The canopy, so let's pretend for a minute we've got that glued in, and then the canopy fits, you know, just slotted right in. Now you notice on the canopy here, there's a little part here that comes down. So that's meant to fit in sort of right up against that that front nose support piece and the nose part. So I've actually trimmed some of this down this way because what was happening was I found of course it's not glued yet, but the front part of the canopy here was lifting up quite a bit. Now you could leave it like that if you want to. I suppose it would help let some airflow in there, but I just wanted to have my canopy nice and snug. So I may still trim it down a little bit more even before I glue it. And then what I actually had to do, you can see a few pieces here that I've already had to trim. I had to just one little bit at a time. I had to trim a little bit off the back of the canopy just to get it to fit up against the back part of the fuselage there. So no big deal. Just, you know, I always just take off a tiny bit at a time, maybe a millimeter or so, and then just keep fitting it until you sort of get it right where you want it. So I think my canopy looks pretty good right now, and I'll probably go with it the way it is. Maybe, like I said, I might trim this a little bit more just to make sure that everything fits in there nice and clean and nice and snug. So that's the canopy. So it takes a little bit of finesse, maybe, depending on how you end up with your cuts and all that sort of stuff. So, all right, so we're going to flip it over. Now, I may have mentioned this earlier in the video. These are, you know, part of the template. If you're going to build an Su35 like I did, these are part of the template that you lay over top of the nacelles when you cut them out. Now, for some reason, they still are not, you still have a bit too much foam remaining. So I'm going to show you what I mean on this one. I haven't trimmed this one yet. So I'm just going to fit it in here. There. So you can see there's still a good amount of foam. It's actually about 3/4 of an inch that sticks out there. So you almost really want to just cut this sort of almost straight down. I've already trimmed. I'm going to take this one off for now and get my plane oriented better here. Very, very high-tech workbench. We might as well talk about how these get installed. They're fairly straightforward. One tip I wanted to pass on to you: sometimes when you cut these things, and especially when you don't have a lot of tolerance when you're putting another piece up against something like that, the foam might not necessarily want to go down into the slot right away. The nice thing about Depron and other foams is you can just kind of go along on the bottom of the tab there and just kind of give it a little tiny bit of a pinch on these little tabs. And what that does is it makes your life a lot easier when you go to feed the piece into the slot. So anyway, you got your two slots here for those two tabs. So what I like to do here is, because obviously this is your landing gear right here, this surface here, I like to, once, I'll put some glue along here, along the tabs, and then once I get that in there, I'll also take some more glue, and I like to run a nice even bead right along there, just to give it, make sure that it's nicely reinforced there. And then this just kind of folds over like the other piece did. So you can see here I've got a little bit more to trim off of there, but I've trimmed back almost 3/4 of an inch, so I could probably trim back maybe another 1/4 of an inch. And then your other two tabs just go right into the little slots. Now on yours, when you're building it stock, this is going to be an open slot on the side here, because you're not going to have this horizontal stabilizer like I do. So it'll make sure that you can see here's the tab coming through. You want this on the inside, you want that left open, because that's the tab where your when you put your tail on, your vertical stabilizer and rudder, that's where that tab's going to fit in. So you want to make sure that fits inside. So just make sure it, like I say, if you fit everything into the tabs okay, everything will line up for you just fine. Okay, so again, what I like to do is I'll run another bead once I glue this down. I like to run another bead just right in along there, just to make sure that's got a good solid bond and foundation. So you're not quite finished yet with your intakes or nacelles. You can see the FRC Foamies has made a pretty neat design. It actually makes the thing, when you do land, it makes it slide along the ground a little easier, because it's got a kind of a gentle curve to it. So you just basically have to put some glue in along on these edges, and
you know, just sort of secure it down. I just probably, when I do that, I just use a little bit of tape and glue that down. Now on the front piece here, again, it allows for some curve. What I actually like to do is I'll push the middle piece of foam down between the two sides and glue it that way, and then it's easy. You can just stick a pin in the side here, and what that does is that when I go to cut off the excess foam with my knife and then sand it down, it just makes the sanding job a little easier, and then you've got a nice, you can make a nice tapered front edge on this as well for aerodynamics and to keep it from getting caught so much when you land. Okay, so that's basically that. Now, what I like to do before I glue all these on is I actually like to sand pretty much, I guess, from there's sort of where a tab comes through right here. I like to do my sanding back here. You don't need to do that, you know, it's still fairly smooth, but I guess I'm a bit anal that way. So I'll probably, before I glue my nacelles on, I will just trim all this and sand this down here nice and smooth, you know, just to help with a nice smooth airflow. So that's basically about it. I personally like to leave my tails, my vertical stabilizer rudder, I like to leave those off till the very last minute. I'll even, if I'm not, depending on what kind of paint job I'm doing, I won't even put them on till after they're painted. I find it just makes my build easier because you're constantly flipping the plane upside down, on its back, on its front, and having the tails in the way just makes for a bigger pain when you're building. Now, because I'm doing a camo, I'm going to end up doing a camo pattern on this. I'm not gonna do the tails. I will actually sort of glue the tails on and then paint it. Okay, so let's, I guess while we're killing all these birds here, let's talk about KFs. So here's the top KF. You can see this is normally on the, if you follow the ones that are on the plans, they come straight across here. And all I've done here is I've just extended this forward using the little template piece. There's that little template piece that allows you to cut this so that it's an Su35 and not an Su37. And I just sort of laid it out with my KF and brought this piece forward. I will tell you that having this piece forward here on the leading edge extension does make a big difference in how smooth and stable the plane feels when it flies. You know, it's a little bit of extra foam, and it's a little tricky to sort of get it tapered and sanded, but it's well worth it in my opinion. And then I just glue mine on. I use this stuff here. This is 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. What I do is I just get some wax paper. I lay some wax paper out and put the piece down. Give it a nice even spray, and then I'll fit the piece on. The reason again I use wax paper is this stuff will start to set up pretty quick, and if you use anything other than wax paper, the paper will adhere to the foam almost right away, and then while you're trying to mess with putting this on your plane, you're also trying to mess around with foam. So what I do, because I've marked where my center of gravity is here, this is one thing that sometimes I've forgotten. So normally I'll put my top two KFs on first, and then what I like to do is, while the glue is in order to let the glue set up, is I just go along with some masking tape, little short pieces of masking tape, you know, and I just sort of tape it every few inches. And then also make sure that sometimes you don't want the back end lifting up, so I'll also run a couple pieces of tape here along the back end. And then once I have the top ones on, I take a pin. Again, I like to use these sort of bigger T-pins and push. There's my center of gravity hole right there. So once I glue it on, then I just push it through there. So then I have the indicator of where my center of gravity is on on the top KF so that I don't lose it completely before I put the bottom KF on. All right, and then once I've got my top KFs on, because I like to use KF4 airfoils, then I'll put the bottom one on, and that just kind of goes, well, it's going to go like this because your obviously your nacelle is going to be right here where these tabs are. So I cut the thing wrong there for a second. All right, so the biggest thing that you want to pay attention to if you're using KF4s and you've never used them before is making sure, it's probably not that easy to see here, but making sure that when you glue them on that the trailing edges match. You know, if the leading edge aren't perfectly matched with the leading edge of the wing, it's not not too big of a deal for me anyways, because you know, I'm going to be shaving and sanding those to make them smooth and aerodynamic anyway. But the big thing here is making sure that when you glue the bottom ones on, that the trailing edges of the top and the bottom match. And the reason that that's important, and I found this out the hard way with the first time I built one of my first FRC Foamies F15 Mark 1s, my bottom KF I think wasn't very much. I think it was maybe 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters further back. The trailing edge was further back than the top was, and my plane it used to zoom on me a lot when I hit full throttle. So anyway, somebody on the forum had told me that to check that. So I trimmed that back to make sure they were even, and that really helped eliminate a lot of the zoom factor. So it's really important that the trailing edges of your top and bottom KFs, if you're going to use KF4 style airfoils, match in order to make sure that your plane is balanced and is not going to zoom or dive on you as speed increases. All right. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit in this section. So I'm going to get busy here with some gluing and some sanding to get me to the point where I've got all of those pieces on that I've talked about here in this segment onto the plane, and then I'm going to show you how I get my symmetrical leading edges on my wings with the KFs on, and then basically it'll be a sand job on the plane, and then we can talk a bit about starting to install the electronics. So that's it for now. I've got a lot of work to do, and I'll see you back again very shortly. Hi everybody. Well, we've made great headway here. I've been a busy little bee finishing off the airframe construction on the Su35. I've just dry fitted my tails here for now. I just wanted to show you something. This prop slot is actually, it's under 7 inches wide, and so what I've done for my rudders is I like to run the the push rods to the outside. So I put the hinge on the angled part of the hinge on the outside, and what that also does is it prevents obviously interference with the prop, and it helps keep this area here in the prop wash area a little bit cleaner. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that. So I'm just going to pop those off so that I don't do something silly and flip the plane over and break them off. All right, so you can see, actually let me point one thing out here. I realized as I went to put my KF airfoil on the top here that I'd been a bit buffoonerous. Because on this leading edge extension there is no, there's not really a tab at all on this forward part where it's quite thin, and of course it's going to be flexible. I didn't pay close enough attention to it when I glued it, and on both sides I was actually, it was kind of curving up a little bit. It was about 2 millimeters too high. So anyway, I just took you know, a little X-Acto knife here with a nice sharp blade on it, and just very gently cut the glue joint in that area, and then just rearranged it. So you want to make sure that's something to pay attention to, whether you're using KFs or not, is just make sure that this front piece on your leading edge extension when you put the two pieces together that's nice and flat, because if it's curved up or curved down, it could significantly impact how well your plane flies. So anyway, lesson learned there from my buffoonery. All right, a little bit about KFs. I know depending on where you are in the world, you may not be able to get this this dollar store foam. It comes with paper on both sides of it. By the time I take the paper off, I think it's on average it's about 4.5 millimeters thick. And I've just found it's been the greatest thickness that works for how I like my planes to fly. And I fly a lot in the wind, so KF4s are really helpful to me. And I like having the same thickness top and bottom. I know some folks like thinner on the bottom, thicker on the top, whatever works best for you. You can use 6 millimeter Depron for your airfoils if you decide to go that way. I think I've seen and read people using as thin as 3 millimeters Depron. So if Depron is what you can get your hands on, you know, you could try 3 millimeter Depron, see how that works, and if it's not thick enough to give you the stability you need from the KFs, you could always put another thickness of 3 millimeter on there. If you were definitely, I've built planes with 6 millimeter Depron as my airfoils, and you end up with a pretty thick wing. Like you can see, this hasn't been sanded, and that's about 15 millimeters there. So that's a pretty thick profile. And if you went with the Depron, especially top and bottom, you're going to end up with a fairly thick wing. So you're definitely going to want to figure out some way to streamline this, or else your plane's going to feel super draggy. I'm just going to show you on this plane here. This was one of the last planes that I built with this sort of chisel style leading edge on my wing, even though I had KF4. And Stefan Moran, my partner from the great state of Alabama, who's partners with me on my blog, he was the one who broke me out of the paradigm of using this and going with a symmetrical leading edge on my wings. And me personally, to me it was just amazing how much smoother my planes flew. They glide a lot further when you're coming into land, which may or may not be a good thing, but it's proof to me that they are more efficient as they go through the air with a symmetrical leading edge. So anyway, whatever works for you, whatever you like, that's fine. I just like the symmetrical leading edge on my wings when I use KF4 airfoils. So again, use whatever material you feel will work for you, and then shape your wing as you see fit. So what I've done here to help me, and I'm just going to kind of demonstrate to you, you can see I've drawn a line here. This is about 3/8 of an inch back from the leading edge. Don't ask me how I came up with that. It just seemed to be, I used to do it when I did the chiseled thing. I used to go back 1/2 inch, so I thought, well, I'll come forward a little bit. Anyway, you can fix it all with sandpaper afterwards anyway, but this is a lot of stuff to sand off, so I'm going to show you how I shave some of that off with a knife first. So I have 3/8 of an inch back, top and bottom, you can see here on both sides. And then I've cut it, you probably can't see it because it's quite pale, but I've sort of drawn a line right in the middle of the 6 millimeter Depron, so that I give myself kind of a guideline, because I'm going to be cutting down this way and then up this way to give myself a pointed and symmetrical type leading edge. Before I get to cutting and demoing, I just wanted to talk briefly, because in the next portion of the video we're going to talk about electronics and components and different options. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences with weight and wing loading on this plane. The very first one that I built, I was still building very, very heavy, I think, as I mentioned in the intro. And the plane, I think, was up around 28 ounces. Big motor, big battery, big speed controller, metal gear servos, too much hot glue, filler, too much paint, the list goes on. So when I flew that plane the first few times, it was an absolute handful, and I really did not like the way that it flew, and I wasn't really even that comfortable flying it. It was not a lot of fun to fly. So I ended up stripping all the aileron servos and rudder servos, put a lighter motor in it, and took it down to probably around 23 or 24 ounces. And it flew much, much better. Personally, as I mentioned before, I fly in a lot of windy conditions. I find personally that between 20 and 21 ounces, and that's with a 2200 battery. I like to fly, like I say, I like to have the extra weight with a 2200 battery when I fly in the wind. So that's with a 2200 battery. So 21 to 22 ounces seems to give me personally the best stability. Obviously you can go way lighter than that, and you're going to have a much lower wing loading, but then, you know, if you get into the wind, you're going to get bounced around a bit more. So I like to be able to have a plane that can kind of fly in all the conditions possible. If I get out there on a dead calm day and I really want to rip around, I'll just drop a 1600 battery in there, and you know, right off the bat lose an ounce or so off of the weight. So anyway, build it. I'm a big believer now, after seeing too many of my big heavy planes get smashed to pieces beyond repair. Build light, but build strong. You know, match your components properly so that you don't end up with your plane being too heavy. Your plane will fly better, and at the end of the day, it will actually last longer. You know, 239 flights on that other plane I've been showing you. It's had a few gonks. Its nose has been bent a little bit, but it survived. The lighter planes survive longer because you don't have as much stuff smashing as it when it comes to a sudden halt. Anyway, my unpaid public service announcement on building light. So I just want to show you, and again, if you're not into to finishing this, you know, shaving it down and sanding it and all that sort of stuff, you don't need to worry about this. You can go ahead and fast forward. What I will say is, on a plane like this, especially with the KFs, a really good shaping and sanding job, in my experience, you're going to drop probably 20 grams, a half an ounce, you know, so slightly over half an ounce of weight or more just by doing that. It's, you know, it is fussy work. It's not one of my favorite jobs, but you know, if you can lose a half an ounce, 20 grams of weight just by doing that, I think it's well worth thinking about as you get into you know, more advanced building. The other thing is it will make your plane feel much more silky and smooth through the air and not as draggy. You know, I've already talked about the trailing edges here are symmetrical, so I'm going to have leading edge symmetrical, and then all these square edges I'm going to shave and sand down as much as possible to make my plane as smooth as possible. It's an hour or two of work overall, but it makes a huge difference. So anyway, having said that, I just kind of wanted to show you the techniques that I use. So I like to take a lot of stuff off with a knife as much as I can before I start to sand. So this is the type of knife that I use. Now I got this from Hobby King. You can get this type of knife from the dollar store, any hardware store. It's based on the Olfa knife, which is a really good high quality knife of this size. And it comes, you know, these are the blades that are meant, you know, you snap off and you get several tips. Now, there's also one that's smaller where the blade is more about half the width of this. Personally, I wouldn't recommend that blade for this purpose of what I'm going to show you, because the blade is too flexible. This blade, even when it's fully out, is still pretty stiff. And if the blade is too flexible, you're going to end up making you're going to snap the blade, or you're going to make a mess of your job, or it could end up being unsafe. These replacement blades, you know, sometimes if I'm making an order from Hobby King and I have some weight to fill up, I'll order these. They're super cheap from Hobby King. I also get these at the dollar store or any hardware store. They're cheap at the dollar store. I might go through 1 or 2 blades on this plane, but I think I pay, like, you know, 2 blades are like 25 cents, if that. So it's worth it. So anyway, nice sharp brand new blade before you start this makes a huge difference. So I'm just going to show you on this edge here. So I learned this tip actually from watching flighttest.com. I find those guys have some really innovative and fresh ideas on often, and I never really thought about it too much. But you want to actually hold your knife at a bit of an angle. If you hold it like this straight on 90 degrees to what you're going to cut, chances are it's not going to cut as smoothly, and chances are the foam is going to bunch up and you're going to end up ripping it, which is not what you want to do. So I found just hold it at an angle and then just gently you know, just slide it along so it's a nice, oops, it will slip out on you, so don't hold your hand directly in the way there, but you can see it's coming off fairly easily there. Don't, you know, just take off a little bit at a time. It's better to take off a little bit at a time and then go back and, you know, and cut some more, or if you don't want to cut some more, then do the rest of it with sandpaper. So that's sort of how I do that. As you get cutting and you start to find if your blade is catching, then it probably means the blade needs to be replaced. The cutting this foam is really, really hard on these blades, so just go for it and put a fresh blade in there, because if not, you could end up you know, tearing the foam, making a mess of your plane when you don't want to. So that's basically how I do those, and I'll just do that, you know, just take my time, go around, do that as much as possible, shave it down nicely with this knife first, you know, the canopy and all that sort of stuff, as much as possible. You can see here on the nose I got a pretty good chunk here, but again, I'll shave that down and then sand it, and you know, make the plane as sleek as possible. So on the wing here, and again, this is for a symmetrical edge, kind of the same thing, although it's a bit of a different challenge. So I don't, you know, I'm not looking to take the full chunk of it off right in one shot. So, you know, I don't necessarily go right up to the line right off the bat. And again, you want to make sure when you've glued these on, give the glue a good time to dry. Okay, if the glue is still wet and you start sliding your blade through there, you're going to get glue on the blade, then it's going to bog down and it's just going to be a real mess. So wait, whatever glue you've used, just, you know, give it a time. I normally give it all day or even overnight, let the glue set up, and then it's going to make a much easier job of it. Also, I've had it happen to me before. I was holding my hand here one time and my blade slipped out right up about here, and I ended up cutting a good chunk out of my thumb here. So I try and hold my plane in a way that I can still handle it. I'm left-handed, obviously, but if the thing slips, it's going to cut the plane, because I'd rather have to fix my plane than fix my thumb. Okay, so just a little safety disclaimer there. So we're just going to start again. Plane held the right way here, and then again at a bit of an angle, doesn't matter whether you're angling in or angling away, and then so I'm just kind of following along very slowly, not cutting down too far down along the center in the Depron, and then not too far back on the dollar store foam on the top, just nice and slow. Again, sometimes it helps if you know, if it's starting to slow down, then move to a different section of the blade and just keep going nice and smooth. Right along there, and then sort of when I get here, you know, I just sort of follow the curve a little bit. You know, I'm going to end up shaving this back here. I'll do this more by eye. Along here on the leading edge extension, but that's sort of how I end up doing the wing. So there's the top part, and then I'll just do the same thing on the bottom part, and then the same thing on the other wing, and then I'll use I'll just go ahead and sand it after that using the same the 150 grit and 220 grit that I talked about when I talked about sanding the other part of the plane before. So anyway, that's how I do it. It works great for me. It's not the only way to do it. like a lot of things in life, but it's the way that works for me. So again, don't, always try and position your hand so that your plane is between your hand and the blade, so that in case it slips out, you don't ram this sharp blade in your hand. Always use a fresh sharp blade. If you find it's starting to bog down, switch blades, get a fresh blade in there, or else you're going to end up tearing your foam and then making your plane look worse. And if you're worried about cutting any more down, don't worry about it. It's obviously a lot easier than to shape it afterwards with sandpaper to get it exactly the way that you want. You can take it off much slower with the sandpaper, but to do this all with sandpaper is a real job, especially on the wing. And this, even cutting these edges here, just makes life a lot easier. Okay, so that's kind of the finishing part, except for painting, which we'll talk about right towards the very end. So I'm gonna pause for now and go off and finish this thing up and sand it down, and then in the next part we're going to talk a little bit about installation of electronics and some of my thoughts on power setups. Again, some of it's just personal opinion, but from what I like to use. But anyway, so we'll see you back on the next part where we're going to talk about electronics. Hey, we're pretty much done here, folks. Got the Su35, the airframe is all together now. Got the tails glued on, installed the motor, cut out the battery bay hatch door. I just hinged that again with foam tack glue and drywall tape. I do like to reinforce it with this fiberglass strapping tape that's got the fiberglass threads in it. Just because I find, putting the battery in and out, lots of times I bump this, and if you bump it against the hinge, the little fibers will break in the tape. So I just like to, in the drywall tape I mean, so I like to have that as a little bit of extra insurance, so that doesn't go flying off in midair. I'm using the Focal Price 2700 kV motor on this with a 6x3 EMP prop. I'll put links on all the components that I use on the blog post when I finish this video. This is a great little motor. It's probably, other than the NTM prop drive 2700 motor when I wanted a really fast plane, this is probably my favorite park jet motor. It's not as efficient as some motors, but it's for the price. You're looking at about $12, $13 by the time you buy a new prop collet, because the one that comes with it is not very good quality. It kicks out about 36 ounces of thrust. Awesome with this prop. It's awesome acceleration and actually pretty decent high-end speed. It weighs the same as the Turnigy D2826 motor, but cranks out about 7 or 8 ounces more thrust. So anyway, that's just my preference. For this plane, I know people have flown it with as light a motor as a Microjet version 3 from Grayson Hobby, right up to an NTM prop drive 2700. So pretty much any motor would work in here. It all depends on how heavy you want your plane to be, what sort of speed you want, that sort of stuff. On my blog, I've written a couple of articles on my thoughts and observations after doing lots of testing on this size plane and the RC Powers MiG-20 or the RC Powers V3 and V4. Pardon me, both about airplane weights, thrust to weight ratio, that sort of stuff. Again, just stuff that, my opinion, plus stuff that I observed from testing. So anyway, that's the motor I use. Doesn't mean you have to use one. What I did here for my motor leads, just to make it a little bit easier, you remember there's two pieces of foam that go on either side of the piece that comes up from the spine. So what I did after those were glued in is I actually carved the little channel out with my knife, and then I was able to bring those wires down through there, and then the tape that helps hold the two magnets in holds those down. And then I just melted a little sort of a bit of a channel in the foam here with my hot glue gun, so that fits down over top of the wires. It's just easier than sort of trying to bend the wires over. My speed controller is going to end up over here probably. Helps. It's just easier than bending the wires around, because these wires aren't very long and they're also a bit brittle at times, and you don't want to put too much strain on them if you can help it. Okay, oh, let's talk about this while I'm on the motor subject. What I do when I mount my motor, I screw it onto the wooden motor mount first. I like to have the prop, or at minimum this little bullet nut on it. I find it helps me then when I can align my motor much easier that way than because if you put the wooden plate on there, it's a little harder to determine whether your motor is going to be straight. So that's what I do. You have this glue seam here in the back, so that makes it easy to align it this way. And then I do it before I put the tails on, so then I can determine whether it's, you know, in the pitch axis, whether I've got the motor tilted up or down. I want it obviously as straight as possible. What I do is I like to use epoxy for anything that's wood that goes into my planes. I like to use epoxy. I've tried it with hot glue, I've tried it with foam tack, and I just find epoxy gives me the best overall, most durable hold without too much weight. So what I do is I put some epoxy on the foam. Actually what I do is I crank up my hot glue gun first to make sure that that's good and hot. And then I mix up my epoxy, put the epoxy on the foam, fit it in there, and then once I've got it sort of set up where I want, and you're not going to be able to see this, but I'll just point out where right on these two little side pieces right over here, right where the wooden motor mount just sort of touches the foam, I just put the smallest little dabs of of hot glue on there to sort of spot weld it, as Stefan would say. And then once that because the hot glue will cure quick, and then that holds the motor mount in place until the epoxy's fully cure. So that works out great, doesn't add a ton of weight. On this one still, again, you might not be able to see it. I ended up with I had a small gap between the wood and the foam after the epoxy dried. So what I did was I used this Gorilla Glue. It's a foaming glue, so I'm not sure what the percentage is. I think it expands, just by, if I was to guess, it probably expands by about 10 times when it hardens. But what it does is then it will, you know, it'll fill any gaps in there and make sure your motor mount's really strong. What I do is I just take a little bit of this, I squirt it on a piece of wax paper, and then I actually just use a toothpick to apply it. You want to put a really thin mount on there because it is going to expand a lot. And if you think you need more, it's always better to add a little more after than, you know, goop it in there, and then when it all expands, it looks like your plane got attacked by a madman with a bunch of spray insulation foam. So that works really well. And you can see it, you might be able to see it better here. I did have a little bit of it kind of foam up on me down here. This is the reason why I cut this inch off here. So because when I glue my motor mount on, it makes it much easier for me. So I've got all my control horns in again with epoxy, and I cut all my holes for my servos. So I have aileron servos, elevon servos will go here. You can see that I did cut out some of my KF foam here to make sure my servos got in there and would lay nice and flat inside, so I'd get a good solid glue joint. I don't find it affects the way the plane flies at all by cutting just a small amount of the KF out here, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. I don't think it impacts, without aid of a wind tunnel, I don't think it impacts it that much. This is just black magic marker. For me, I'm going to have a little bit of paint up here on the nose, but about 80% of the bottom of the plane is going to stay white. And I find these big bold black lines really help me with orientation when the rest of the plane is white. I do the same thing here on my engine nozzles. So the magic marker adds 0 weight to the plane, and then, you know, as this gets scuffed and faded as you're landing, you can just touch it up real quick with a magic marker. You don't have to mess around with paint. Works real well. What else did I want to point out here? Yeah, I guess that's about it on the bottom. On the top here, these are where my rudder servos are going to go now. I just wanted to point out some things here that you know, that I always learn from my own buffoonery, or sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but hopefully you'll be able to learn from it. Originally I thought my rudder servo was going to go here, but when I looked at how the rudder servo was going to work, I got worried that especially like on this one, for example, when it went this way, that my push rod was going to rub on the horizontal stabilizer. So it's now moved forward, and I think it's going to be fine. The point I want to make here is that I found unfortunately through making this mistake more than once, is until I'm 100% sure where my servos are going to go, I don't throw these little pieces of foam out, because in this situation all I did was when I realized my buffoonery, I just took the piece of foam I had cut out, put a tiny bit of foam tack on it, pushed it back in there, and then it fits nice and snug, and you know, once it's painted, it'll be hard to tell that I ever cut it out of there. Rather than, you know, then having thrown it away, and then go, oh, I want to fill that hole, and then you got to muck around cutting a piece to fit. This way you've got the piece that came out of there. So anyway, just lesson learned. So you probably can see as well, it's all sanded up. I'm really happy with how my sanding and shaping job came out. Hopefully you can see I've got the symmetrical leading edge now on my wing, with the KF sanded, shaped and sanded back both top and bottom. So looking forward to seeing how that works out on this plane, since the other one that I built has the chiseled leading edge. So she's ready for paint, and then final installation of the electronics, and then we should be ready to fly. So I just wanted to talk about electronics. Like I said, quickly, you can use pretty much any power setup you want on this plane, I think. If I was to put the NTM prop drive in this plane now, I'm going to gain probably 3 or 4 ounces. So I'm going to be up around the 25 ounce range. From what I've experienced, getting up any higher than that with the Su35 anyway, it's the plane didn't handle as well as I would have liked. So just be cautious of your weight there. Again, if you want a little bit more insurance of extra wing area and lower wing loading, then you might be better to build the Su37 than the Su35, but just my humble opinion. So quick and dirty, I like to use the transmitter that I like to use. This is a Turnigy 9X from Hobby King, very inexpensive radio, and for about another 50 bucks at least delivered to my door, you can buy the Smarty Parts circuit board that goes in here and allows you to flash it with the ER9X firmware, which is just phenomenal. It takes this radio to a whole new level. The only limits to it probably are my imagination, but it's so flexible to program, to mix, to assign switches. It really is good that way. So tons of information available on YouTube on this radio and how it compares to other radios, as well as great videos on how to install the Smarty Parts board. They have it set up now so that you don't even have to solder it. It's just, you know, they send you all the stuff you need in the kit, put it in there, and flash it with the ER9X, and away you go. It says 9-channel. I suppose it is if you were using a battery elimination circuit, but it's primarily an 8-channel radio. If you want that, you can have with the ER9X, I can have 16 planes programmed in this, which is plenty. So anyway, like I said, lots of info on the on YouTube on that, or you can ask me questions about it. Stefan, I think Stefan runs the Spectrum DX8. So if you have questions on DX8, or you're looking to shop around for a new radio, you know, we can help you out. I think at the end of the day, shipping, battery, the whole 9 yards. I use a Lifey 3-cell battery to power this. Looking at probably, I don't know, 180 bucks, let's say, maximum. Well worth the money, in my opinion. But anyway, the radios are like cars. We could sit and talk about which is better all day long, I guess. I use a 6-channel receiver that's compatible with it. You know, it does have this big long antenna, which, you know, you may not compared to other setups, but it works great. I run my rudder servos on a Y harness because I don't need V-tails or any funky mixing with my rudders, so that works out great. And then I have separate channels for my aileron and elevon servos, which allows me, the other beauty of the ER9X is it allows me to fine-tune each individual servo, each individual channel to do exactly what I want it to do. Works great. And this is much lighter. It weighs, I think, maybe 5 grams, if that. And the big bulky one that comes with the radio, the 8-channel one, is like 14 grams, and again much bigger. So I use this, although it's $4 more expensive than the 8-channel. It works great for me. Speed controller, if you're going to use the focal price 2700, I highly recommend using a 40 amp speed controller. It's rated at 30, but I have most of my motors draw 30 plus constantly at full throttle. So through hundreds and hundreds of flights and lots of testing, I found the 40 amp speed controller works much better, allows things to run a lot cooler. It is a little bit heavier, so you're going to gain about 7 or 8 grams of weight, but you know, peace of mind works great. Just real quick, if your favorite type of speed controller has a programming card that you can buy with it, many of them do now. This is an awesome investment. This I think cost me $8. The only thing you can't program into it is setting the throttle points, like you know your upper and lower throttle points. You have to have the transmitter to do that. But you can program everything else to do with your speed controller here, rather than you know doing the old listen to the beeps, move the stick up, move the stick down, which I found was always just so confusing, and I was rarely confident that I had set what I wanted. This allows you to do it. You just plug this, plug the ESC into your card, hook a battery up to it. The lights will light up, and then just a couple of buttons. You just move the lights around to where you have what you want selected. Press OK, and it boom like that. If you want to play around and do some testing with timing modes or brake on and off, nice thing about it, you can take this to the field and reprogram your ESC just within a matter of seconds. So very worth the money if you have can get a programming card to go with your with whatever speed controllers you like to use. Just quick and dirty before I move on. I know a lot of people are always worried about whether the battery elimination circuit in their speed controller is going to run 6 servos or more. Well, I haven't run more than 6 servos, but I regularly run 6 servos with this and the 60 amp that I run with my NTM prop drive. Never have had a problem, even when I've done using high alpha, where you've got I've got spoiler on servos working, elevon servos working, and rudder servos working all at the same time. I've never had a problem where I've had a servo run out of power with the battery elimination circuit that's built in. So I don't ever use an external battery elimination circuit. Either I've been very lucky, or you know, the ESC works great. I mean, it's got bulletproof written right on it, so it's got to be good, right? But anyway, I really like these. You know, I fumbled around with a lot of different cheaper brands early in my park jet career, and once I started using these Turnigy plushes, I haven't looked back. They're a really, in my opinion, a really good ESC. With respect to servos, I've written a fairly extensive article on my opinions and my experiences with plastic gear or nylon gear servos versus metal gear servos. So you can go to the blog and read about that, on my thoughts on that. With this motor set up on this plane, I'm going to be using 6 nylon gear servos. These are from RC Timer. They're very inexpensive. They're like $1.89 or something, I think. So much cheaper than, say, even the HXT 900 from Hobby King. I find they're stronger, smoother, and I've only ever had one where I've plugged it in and it's gone funky on me. Touch wood, I haven't stripped one yet. I have stripped a couple of the HXT 900s in the past. These actually have a longer servo arm. You have one extra hole here, you know, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility on that. I just want to show you, hopefully you can see here a little closer. If you're just new in the hobby and you hear people talking about mechanically reducing your control surfaces, what they mean is the closer you move your connector or your push rod to the screw here that holds this in, you get more torque. So if you need lots of torque, that's the way to go, but it won't move as far compared to having the connector out here at the end. So I always mechanically reduce the throws of my ailerons by 50% right off the bat by putting this about halfway down. Stefan has written an article and put together an awesome spreadsheet on how he likes to set his servos up. He likes to set them up closer to the inside here to get a maximum torque. And if you have a DX8 type radio, you can use that from DX8 from Spectrum. That's what he uses, and you can just use that info right away. He's gone through a lot of work to set that up. So, and I should, again, another paradigm I need to break out is to actually give that a try sometime, but this is what works for me. One thing I will mention about RC timer and focal price. Focal price is actually out of the motor that I talked about right now, but I think I may have found another source. I'm just waiting for it to come in the mail from Deal Extreme. I think it's the same motor, and I'll post information on the blog when that becomes available. If you need the servos by the end of the week, don't order from RC Timer. The quickest I've ever got shipment from them is about 4 weeks. Normally it's more like 6 weeks. And what you save in shipping, normally their shipping is free, you pay for in time. So just be aware of that. So because they're inexpensive, I just order a lot of them at a time. And then once you get enough of them, I just recycle them. You can still see there's a bit of glue on here. This is probably the third airplane that these servos have been in. So they've been very durable thus far. So both Stefan and I like to make our own push rods. I just make mine out of 2mm carbon rod. And I just epoxy a little clevis on here, a little nylon clevis I get from Hobby King, very cheap. And then the connector is just a little 2mm connector. You can get these from either RC Timer or Hobby King. Again, I'll have links on the blog post to all this gear if you're interested in more info about that. One thing is the way I used my setup. Obviously, I can't bend my carbon push rod, so I have to angle my servo and angle my control horns for the ailerons. I know a lot of people might not like this setup. As long as the hole's over the hinge, I find it works just fine. And this control surface is not going to move very far anyway, so it's not really a big deal. Being able to bend and adjust your push rods is important to you, you can always I use epoxy and a little bit of wax. Unwaxed dental floss. You can kind of strap a little piece of metal push rod to the end, or Stefan has used a 3mm carbon tube and then put a Dubro push rod down the center of it. Then you have a flexible piece, so you want to set it up. And again, you can do the same thing if you don't like using these clevises. You can put a piece of metal on the end and then just make a Z-bend to go into your control horn. Lots of different options. Last thing real quick on batteries here. I've got 3 different batteries here. This is an 1800 30 to 40C discharge, so this gives me tons of power for my focal price motor. I get about a 5.5 minute flight out of it. This is the lightest battery. I think this is around, I'll go in grams because I can't remember in ounces, but I think it's about 147 grams. This is a 2200, but it's a zippy compact. It's a 25C, so for pretty much any lightweight motor right up to the NTM or to the focal price motor, this gives you plenty of amps. It's quite light. It's actually an ounce lighter than this one, which is also a 2200, but it's a bigger discharge. I've been flying my original Su35 a lot with this battery, and it works out really well. But anyway, that's another option. This battery has sort of become my favorite all-around battery. It is a bit heavier. I think it's about 197 grams. This is, I think, 167 grams. But it's a 40C discharge. So I can take this, I can take 2 different planes, one with a focal price motor and one with the NTM prop drive 2700 motor, and I can use this battery in both planes. Pardon me. So like I said, it is a bit heavier. So I build my planes kind of knowing that this is probably the battery that I can have the ability to use. I think as I've mentioned before, I like to fly my planes in around sort of the 20 to 21, 22 ounce range. And with this motor, that they can handle that just fine. So using this battery, having the ability to use this battery, like I said, this is a very versatile battery because I can run my NTM 2700 motors with it as well. So anyway, that's quick and dirty. Again, if you have links will be posted to this, and any questions, please post them on the blog or on the YouTube channel, and I'll do my best. And Stefan, if you post on the blog, if you have questions about how Stefan sets up his servos or push rods or whatever, or questions about the DX8, I'm sure that he can help you out on that. Alright, so like I said, the next time you see this plane, it'll be painted, all the electronics will be installed, and it'll be ready to fly. So what we'll do is we'll just do a final quick once over. I'll show you kind of the throws where I'm going to be starting off at before I maiden the plane, and then I think we're done. So one more step to go, folks, and then this odyssey of this video will be done. So we'll see you in the next part. Hi everyone. Well, we're finally here at the final stage of the Su35 Mark II build. I've got it all painted up, and insignia has been put on. All the electronics and everything else, push rods, it's all installed. As you see it here right now, it's ready to fly. So we're finally there. As I may have mentioned, I use craft paint from the dollar store, Walmart, Michaels, any craft store basically. This paint scheme is based on an Uzbekistani Air Force Su-27 paint scheme that was around in 2010. So I kind of thought it looked pretty cool. So it's not exact, it's inspired by that paint scheme, but I think it'll look okay and give me good contrast in the air. So just real quickly on the paint, I just buy these little bottles. I think this one's from like the dollar store. It's about $1.25. Again, I don't know why they still keep calling it the dollar store, but anyway, it's inexpensive. It's, you know, you get what you pay for with the quality. The more expensive ones, like these ones here from Apple Barrel, I think I got this at Michaels. They tend to have better quality pigments and stuff in them. But for these planes, I think, you know, the more inexpensive stuff is just fine. I just wanted to share with you something that I tried this time. I've been finding recently my paint schemes have been adding about 40 grams, 1.4 ounce, which was just too heavy for my liking. So either I was gobbing the paint on too heavily. The one thing about using, you know, different quality paints, the consistency of how thick they are is not the same. Normally what I use is I just brush this on by hand. So I use these little cups, these little plastic cups I get at Walmart. The nice thing about these is I can recycle these, wash them out with hot soapy water, and use them 4 or 5 times before I need to throw them out, because I end up with a little bit of paint in the crevices there, and I don't want colors mixing. But anyway, these are handy, and then I just, you know, use what I need. So what I did this time was using this. This is a 50-50 water rubbing alcohol mix. Again, I get this at my favorite RC place, the dollar store, and it's the same stuff that I use to take the paper off of the dollar store foam. So what I did was I just mixed a little bit of it in with the paint, stirred it up till it was sort of the consistency of coffee cream, I guess, if you want, maybe a tiny bit thicker than that, and then brushed it on. And for the most part, it seemed to hold the paint seems to hold its color and its pigment really well. The really good news is that it saved me about 9 grams on the paint job. So that you know, so I'm down to almost basically about an ounce on the paint job, which is pretty decent. So I might try even thinning it a little bit more. I would probably keep using the alcohol water mix, because the alcohol evaporates a lot faster, and it dried, pardon me, even though I thinned it, it dried in about the same time as the non-diluted stuff. I think if I had to use just all water, it would have taken quite a bit longer to dry. But anyway, just some tips there. So the bottom, as I've mentioned, is mostly white. I sort of blended blue down from the nose to sort of stay with, oop, bust my plane before I get a chance to fly it. So I sort of just blended the blue down here from the nose, just for a little bit of aesthetics. You can see my servos there, elevon and aileron servos, all set up and ready to go. So I just kind of quickly, what I would suggest, if you've never flown this plane before, on the plans, when you downloaded the plans, there's a file called Plan View, put together by FRC Foamies. There's a lot of good information on that, you know, good reference information. I would use that as my reference to start off with. I think they recommend 1.5 inch of travel, which means, you know, 1.5 inches up, 1.5 inches down, for a total of 3 inches of travel on your elevons, with about 40% expo. 3/4 of an inch travel, I think, on the ailerons if you decide to use them, again with 40% expo. If you're newer, my experience, if you're a bit newer in the hobby, you might want to put the expo up a little bit higher, just so that you're not too twitchy on the controls. This is a very responsive plane, and you know, you might want to just go with a little higher expo, but whatever you feel comfortable with. Me personally, I fly with probably 50% expo all around. It's just the way that I learned, and you know, it's kind of the muscle memory that I have for flying. So that's kind of what I use. So I just wanted to show you, you know, I've got a little bit more travel than on the plan view. I have slightly smaller elevons than stock, so I copied from what I had in my other plane and just increased it just a little bit, just to make sure, you know, until I get a chance to really dial it in. So, and then I've got elevons and ailerons working together, and rudders. You might be able to hear these servos for the rudders here are brand new, so they're still pretty quiet, and these are these have had lots of use. This is the third plane these have been in, so they're a little bit noisier. All right, so all of my rudder wires, all of my servo wires run. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see, but they run through the intake. And then what I do is, rather than hacking away and cutting holes in the foam, is I just run them. You can see here, I've just run them up. You know, 3 wires on each side, an elevon, aileron, and rudder servo wire on each side. And what I've done here is I've put some hot glue, rather than trying to wedge my fingers down in there with some tape, which you could do, might be a little bit lighter. I've just put a bit of a glob of hot glue there to hold those wires in place so that they don't flop around. You know, I want them, you don't want to yank on them really hard so you end up breaking them, but just kind of pull them a little bit snug so that they're not flopping around in your intake. And then also by gluing them, securing them down here, then they're not going to interfere with your prop. So I've moved my, over my other plane, I've moved my speed controller back about 1.5 inches. I know this looks like a real rat's nest. My receiver's over here, and I've got all my wires all zip tied together there to try and keep them under some semblance of control. This is a 2200 milliamp battery, and that's sort of where it's going to be for the maiden flight. When I do my maiden flights normally on a new plane, I always do it indoors where there's no wind before I go to the field. And what I like to do is I get it balanced bang on the stock. So the stock CFG center of gravity on this plane is right here. You know, you can see sort of the hole in the wing there that I poked with the pin. And then what I do is I'll move the battery just a tiny bit forward until when I balance it again on that point, I might have like about a 10-degree nose down attitude. Just my personal technique, I like to always maiden a new plane with a little bit of down nose heavy rather than tail heavy. Just, you know, from my experience of maidening probably 50 park jets in the last 2 years, it seems to be the system, that process that works best for me. So anyway, that's sort of where it's going to be, which is a bit further forward than on my other plane. So that's good, because I'm going to have, well, my weight will be spread out a little bit more. But I'm hoping that you know, we'll see how it affects the handling and the performance. Okay, I think that is about it. We are finally here, and we're finally ready to fly this plane. So I appreciate your patience. I thank you for watching this video. Again, if you have any questions at all, please post them on the YouTube channel or on the blog, which I will link in the comments below this video.
any questions whatsoever, whether it involved this airplane or other airplanes I've built or techniques that I've used in this video, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'll do whatever I can to answer. I hope that some of this has been helpful to you. If it's, again, as I said in the introduction, if it's been helpful to one person, then my job's been done. So thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for watching.